So
Yeah, maybe so.
I'd like to call the Duval Committee of the Whole workshop and regular to order at 5:30 p.m. for November 18th, 2025. And I'll
Excellent.
ask everyone's to bear with me. I think Amy and I are both working remotely, so if I don't recognize you, I will defer to the clerk or folks in the room to bring it to my attention. The first item of this evening is just the review of the regular meeting agenda. Are there any questions or concerns about the agenda?
What one, Ron? This is Rick.
Rick has his hand up. I'll help you with that, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay.
Rick has his hand up.
Anyway, this isn't it's really a question, not a concern. Just wondering if we can get an update. You know, there was a news article a couple of weeks ago regarding Duval, being in the hot seat with lack of affordable housing. I suppose got discussion last meeting on this, but I would like an update on that.
Yeah, you can. That's something you need to bring up with at this council meeting. We can put a note on it. I'll ultimately defer to the mayor and the city administrator whether this is the appropriate forum and whether they're prepared to do that. But
Council meeting's fine.
definitely make a note here, Rick. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I can include it in the city administrator report if that works.
That would be great. Thank you. And hearing nothing else, the first item of discussion for this evening.
Oh,
You Councilmember Napland?
Oh, yes.
I had a follow-up on what Councilmember Schaefer asked for at the last council meeting. I also asked for similar information, and I was told that there was an outstanding public records request if we wanted to get more information. I went and looked at the public records request listings and I couldn't find that listed. So I don't know, maybe I'm not looking right, but I was so kind of in line with what Councilmember Schaefer is asking. I really do think that the council needs to be kept appraised of what's happening with that. And I'd really like to see the documentation. There's been a lot of correspondence potentially back and forth that's obviously public record. And so I don't know how to get that. And
who do you think is corresponding? I mean, you said you think that there's corresponding. So like, I guess I need to know what you're asking for. So there is a public records request. It's under Ryan Packer. It's open. So it was a fairly exhaustive public records request. We're gathering all the information. We have most of it. We can release it and it'll be under that public records request number.
What I was referring to is an article that I believe Councilmember Schaefer maybe was mentioning has been circulating. The article mentioned correspondence and there were excerpts of the correspondence. And so that would be what I am talking about.
So that would also fall under the public records request because that is part of the public records request. That is correspondence that people in the administration either have not seen or have recently seen, and that's part of the public records request. So as the city administrator has reiterated, it's an exhaustive public records request. As you'll hear later today, we are being deluged by very extensive public records requests at this point. And so it will be released when that information is ready, following our existing public records policy for the city of Duval.
Okay. As council members, it's a pressing issue. So it seems a little odd that we have.
You're welcome to schedule a private meeting with me and the mayor pro tem and the city administrator if you would like to learn more about what was in that article offline before that public records request is ready.
I would like to do that.
All right.
Yes, just so everyone knows, it's records request 25
166.
Yeah, 166.
And
So-
what does it say?
So it was the reporter for the Urbanist asking for all of the documentation to support his article. So we're gathering all of that, putting it all together, and we have most of it. It's almost ready to be released. And when we can release it, we will. I mean, like all public records requests, they require some amount of redaction and going through the city attorney. So not fast sometimes, especially when it's a massive public records request and asking for a lot of information, but we're almost there, ready to publish it. But that doesn't preclude me giving an overall update in the city administrator's report about the efforts we're taking to deal with it.
Thank you.
And I would just add as well that when the media asks for things, the administration does not go to council and inform council that a media request has come in. That is not standard practice amongst any local government jurisdiction. So typically those things will happen if there's an article to be shared or something that's relevant to the council as a whole, that's pertinent information and emerging. In this case, it's not.
And I'm going to move us forward at this point because that went a little beyond the scope of the regular review of the meeting agenda into discussion. And it sounds like we do have a course of action in terms of the city administrator providing update during her comment period in council, or if we bring that forward, if we have time, into the CAL. So the first item of discussion this evening is the introduction to the sensitive area code update, and that will be led by Naomi Montes de Oca and the senior planner, as well as Nicole Stickley, who's the associate principal of land use at AHBL. And so I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. I'm actually Millie-Ann Van Devender. I work with Nicole, and I'm here to provide you the introduction to the SAO update, or the Sensitive Areas Ordinance update. So, ready? Yeah, thank you. So just to give a little background, a Sensitive Areas Ordinance includes all the regulations and information on your 5 sensitive areas or critical areas. So your wetlands, the regulations would talk about the functions and values of wetlands and how they're good for water quality and critter habitat. And then geologically hazardous areas, that's your steep slopes or any kind of landslide prone areas. Fish and wildlife habitat conservation areas are just what they sound like. That could be anything from preserve or endangered or protected species and how to protect those, to streams, salmon. Got your critical aquifer recharge areas. The regulations for those are included in the SAO. And those regulations usually pertain to trying to prevent things from going into the ground and seeping into the critical aquifer areas. And then your frequently flooded areas, which those are delineated by FEMA on the FIRM, the flood insurance rate maps. So there's some regulations on that. And those are actually located in a separate chapter in the municipal code from the sensitive areas regulations. And the locations of those are on this slide on the right. A little more background. Duval last updated your sensitive areas ordinance in 2017, and that was based on the best available science at the time, and subsequently or coincides with the last time that you conducted a best available science review. That was also in 2017. So it's all based on best available science, which I'll get into a little more in the next slide, please. Thanks. So what is happening? What is this update? So Washington state law requires the city to review your sensitive areas ordinance in accordance with best available science and then make updates accordingly. So best available science, there's research going on all the time, and new developments emerge. And so it's a good idea, and it's a state law to do it, to look at what's most current and what's considered best in the field. And then to make updates accordingly if there are any gaps or missing pieces in your code. To help with this, Department of Commerce from the state has a critical areas checklist, and that's actually in your packet tonight. It's a tool that we use, the jurisdictions can use to figure out efficiently, or to efficiently figure out what is missing from your code, if anything, and what kind of Commerce is really good about putting in the checklist any kind of laws that have been updated. They'll ask questions about that, like does your code include the things that this law covers? And then obviously where gaps exist, draft amendments are prepared. The purpose of the sensitive areas ordinance, I said a little bit about that earlier, is to preserve the natural environment, wildlife habitats, and sources of fresh drinking water. It's to encourage public safety by limiting development in those areas that are prone to natural disasters like floods and landslides. and to protect the functions and values of critical areas using the best available science. So I might slip and call it critical area ordinance. Jurisdictions all over the state, some call it sensitive areas and some call it critical areas. It's the same thing. Next slide, please. So just to be clear, the sensitive area ordinance requirements will apply to future development. So as soon as this is adopted, any applications that come in after that would be required to follow the new regulations. It won't apply retroactively to past actions. It won't require changes to existing land uses or developments. And it will apply in the shoreline jurisdiction after the shoreline master program update is complete, because ecology has to review that. Next slide, please. So the timeline for going forward, first phase is to do some initiation and evaluation. So to summarize the current best available science, AHVL is working with Herrera Environmental as a subconsultant, and they prepared a memo on best available science that's included in your packet. And from there, we are able to start to identify gaps in your existing code. And then the next phase is to revise and report. So to do what we're doing right now and share what we found during the phase one. So sharing that checklist and sharing the memo of the best available science and sharing some of the things that some of the gaps that we see need to be filled and worked on. And then to start drafting preliminary updates to the code. The next phase will take feedback and incorporate that in and continue working on updating the codes to get it to a 90% draft level. And then we'll be back to see you and the Planning Commission to present the proposed changes to the code. You'll get the document. It'll have red lines use track changes so you can see what is proposed to be removed from the code and what's proposed to be added to the code. So you'll have an opportunity to look at all of that, as well as potentially looking at opportunities to, there may be notes that say, this is the current best available science, or we double checked and this piece right here is correct. And then after that, we'll move it into a final revision. So taking all the feedback, if there's any feedback from the public and feedback from various agencies. We've already heard from Fish and Wildlife and tribes, and just trying to work closely with them and get their recommendations. And then eventually we'll bring it to you for adoption once it's ready. And we're shooting for a March adoption for this to get it done. So next slide, please. So I've already told you that these are in your packets. This is just a slide to remind me to tell you about your packet. The checklist is in there and the best available science is in there. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to.
Does council have any questions around anything that presented or the timeline?
Not seeing any. Oh, Ms. Councilmember Schaefer.
Thank you. Yeah, more of a comment than a question, I guess. But first of all, I appreciate this renewed focus on sensitive areas, and I know, for example, Duval has an area next to the Snoqualmie River that has little, if any, riparian buffer associated with it. Would this potentially result in some action to remediate that, create a better riparian buffer than we currently have?
There is potential for that. I will say that the Snoqualmie River is considered a shoreline of the state, and so the buffers and requirements adjacent to it are determined through your SMP. There may be some overlap with the Snoqualmie River, though, and creeks. We will be looking at, and we are looking at, the best available science for the appropriate amount of riparian area to be adjacent to all of your water bodies, creeks and streams.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our second item of discussion for this evening is the Community Events and Communication End of Year Report, and that would be from Rita Moreno, our Community Events Coordinator. So I will turn it over to you, Rita.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Thanks for having me in tonight. Let's see, tonight I'm going to share a quick look back at our 2025 events, communications, and our cultural commission work that we did this year, and what we are excited about for 2026. This year for me was about connection and bringing our community together. So celebrating community. As you can see, in 2025, we had a great year for city events. We hosted new events like Holy and Duval Summer Splash, which was a big hit over at Big Rock Park. We had about 250 kids running around with sprinklers, and Eastside Fire showed up, and just, it was a really great event. You can see a photo there with the grass and the rainbow. That's really cool. Let's see. And then we also hosted some of our signature events, such as Summer Stage, which also has a photo there. That is the band 13 Till Midnight. And that band brought in about 1,700 people to our city. The band took a group selfie after their set, and it was just super popular. We had so many kids. PD got involved, made bracelets. They had a post on Facebook that was really popular. So it was really great to see the park full of families, just having a really good time. So all of this, it takes a lot of planning, working with vendors, working on logistics, communications, advertising these events. It's definitely a team effort. We have a strong support from our Public Works Department, who without them, a lot of these events won't happen. They, whenever we have an idea or need help with something, they are right there to always lend a hand. We also have a lot of support from police and some community volunteers as well. At the end of the day, the focus is always on creating fun and safe, inclusive environments and events. Seeing the park full of people having a great time is just a great payoff when you see everybody there having fun. We also helped with community events. So we have nonprofits that do events. We supported 45 community-led events. Some of the groups we collaborated with are March of the Vegetables, Duval Farmers Market, Duval Days Committee. That's a big one. Chamber of Commerce, the Historical Society. So we help them with permitting, logistics, and promotion, and that help makes their events successful. And it also helps their events be more accessible. So these partnerships are important. The more we can help others activate our spaces and use our parks, the stronger and more connected our community becomes. So social media and communications, our communications presence grew a lot this year. We got more followers, more engagement, and more consistent posting across all of our platforms. You can see there, I put a little, kind of hard to see, but it's just a little graphic that shows some of the growth that we had. And then if you give me just a second, a good example is our stormwater team shared a video about salmon spawning. And that video currently has 30,000 views. And from that video, we got 17 follows just on our Facebook account alone. So the more that we are putting out there, the more people are seeing the good work that we're doing and what's happening in Duval. We shared updates about events, road closures, emergency alerts, police department and weekly post, and we did behind the scenes content, which people really love. The focus was simple. It was for us to be clear, timely, helpful, and make the residents feel included, like they know what's happening in the city. And the numbers are showing that it's working. Like I said, our following has really grown. Cultural Commission. So there you can see some of the work that the Cultural Commission has completed. The murals were a big success. The trolls are just so fun to see every time I drive into town. I love looking at those. I don't know, everybody here got stickers, I believe, from the trolls, so that's always fun to have. They had a really busy year supporting public art, cultural projects, and creative programming around town. They did things like pop-up art at Summer Stage. They helped with the Show Your Pride event. So they are really getting down and dirty and getting in there and doing some fun stuff. So their work brings a lot of heart and personality to our public spaces, and I'm just excited for them to continue that work in 2026. So looking ahead to 2026, I'm excited to keep the momentum going. I think I have a great partnership with Cynthia. She is my idea. Like we have great meetings where we have all these fun ideas that Steve just loves, our public works director. We'll be focusing on strengthening partnerships and sponsorships, growing our communication tools, supporting more public art, and building a stronger volunteer base. I think one thing that really sticks with me from my time in Kenmore was a really big thing was helping people love where they live. And I see that happening here naturally. And that's something that I love. It is from the flowers that people put on the windowsills to just the rock art, everything that you see in the city it's just so beautiful, and it shows how much people love living here. So I want to continue that. I want to continue to create moments that make people love to live here. So and that's really the goal, helping our community feel connected, proud, and engaged. Thank you. Any questions?
Comment.
Any questions? Or
I have a
comment?
comment, Councilmember Nathland does as well. So I just want to say a big kudos to Rita, Cynthia, and all of the staff and community partners that have come together to really fully develop our community outreach and arts and events program in the city. I've lived here 20 years now, and this year is hands down by far the most engaged, connected year that this city has ever had, with events, with supporting events with all of our nonprofits and just those random folks that are developing events to bring our community to. It would not be anywhere near what it is without Rita and Cynthia's forethought as well. I will say that when 16 years ago as a council member, this was something we never really dreamed of actually being able to pull off. And not just pull it off, but pull it off well and see continued increasing turnout, as well as increasing expanding partnerships and sponsorships throughout these events. I think Rita said it really well, is that people really do love where they live here in Duval. And I continue to hear every day about how people are moving here for the sense of community, the quality of life, and the events and other things that we have here to bring people here. It's so much beyond our natural landscape that it is something that is extraordinarily special. And I really look forward to seeing it continue to grow and prosper into the future. So thank you all. Councilmember Nathland?
I had a couple questions. Also, thank you. I mean, it really has been a fun year and a lot of engagement with the partners, which is huge, and it's exciting to see that grow. So the one question I have relates to something we had talked about. I'm not sure if we ever passed it, but there was going to be a policy about community events, I think, that came to council at one point. I remember that. And within it, when we had that discussion, I had asked that it'd be really neat to have kind of a more dollar than numbers type report at the end of the year of the event. Like, so financially it'd be like, you know, what kind of in-kind costs, with their staff time, you know, perhaps the total cost for each event, you know, did we bring in sponsorships? How much should we get? Just to kind of gauge where we're at with the events, because my goal as a council member has always been to make these things sustainable. And you know, we need to really understand how much we're spending on things to understand how we can, you know, piece together the funding for those events. And the other part of that report would be, you know, just like an estimate of attendance for the events and maybe an estimate of volunteer time, just to kind of see, like, you know, how much volunteer time are we getting to these events? Because I think growing that is also a key to have our events be less reliant on city staff and just really build that, you know, it's our city, you know, and so if we want these events, then, you know, maybe we, you know, try to build a volunteer. And then when new people move in, they feel part of the city. When they volunteer for the events, you know, they become part of it. So anyway, I just think there's a lot of benefits of community building when you build the volunteer network. So that was my one question, and I thought we were going to include that, but maybe we never got to the final adoption of the community event maybe you remember, because I think it came forward, but I don't know if you adopted it.
Mayor Pro Tem, City Administrator McNabb has a comment.
Yeah. So I think we're talking about a couple different things. One was kind of a request for an end of year report. But we didn't really nail down all the every facet of what that end of year report would look like. So I know Councilmember Naplan, you had asked for very kind of granular financial information. I don't recall that council kind of passed that as a need, but certainly, council can decide what you want the end of year report to look like. This is a version of an end of year report, but it's totally up to council to ask what information you need to have that end of year report be meaningful. I will say some information is easy to get and some is truly just an estimate. So staff costs, we get requests for staff costs. Those are hard to glean. We've done it. So for instance, I gave council some staff costs for what we put in for Duval days in light of Duval, some of the external events. But I'd say even those are very rough estimates. So that's my recollection of what an end of year report is. There was a lot of talk, but we never had council kind of issue a directive of exactly what he wanted in it. The second thing is there's special events policy, which is the kind of nuts and bolts of special events. Like, how do you apply for a permit? What city support are you going to get? What do we expect applicants for special events to do, to have insurance requirements? And that's a separate policy, and that's under development now, and will likely come to council in the first quarter of next year.
So, is there an appropriate time to talk about what we would like in an end of year report? Or I guess I didn't realize that like a decision had been made. I thought I brought it up and it seemed, I got the impression that it was something that was kind of planned, that you would do some of that. I didn't know there was never any vote or other people saying they weren't supportive of it. I guess I'm just trying to understand, how would that happen?
So I would suggest, like any agenda item, that you, council members, take it to Mayor Pro Tem. And we've talked about this for the 3 years I've been here. The appropriate process is, if you want something on the agenda or you want policy work done, as specified in the council procedures, is that you would take it to Mayor Pro Tem. We meet every week, and then we set the agenda based on what council has fed into the Mayor Pro Tem. So if council wants a particular set of policy work done, if you want something on the agenda that does not come through me while I set the agenda for a practical purpose, like where things fit in an agenda, I don't set policy from council or ask for policy from council. So that needs to go to Mayor Pro Tem.
And the other piece I would add to that as well is, obviously we set some boundaries in terms of staff time, what we would bring back to council versus what we could just, staff could execute on. I think the other piece where this would fit, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, city administrator, but if there's a recurring ask, we would typically also build that as sort of the part of the budget process. So there's an allocation of funds for some of these events, and I think what you're looking for is sort of a little bit of an oversight in terms of what did we actually spend versus our estimate? Are we within or outside of budget? And then I think the specific comments I heard you make around sustainability, both in terms of the grant challenges I know we've had in terms of some of these grants are not automatically renewable. They need to change focus every year, which makes it a little more challenging. But for some of these other events whether it's the music crawl or art walk, in terms of how we fold that into community engagement and then sort of have a checkpoint. But I would echo what the city administrator said. If we want it on the agenda, there's a scheduling piece of it, but also the granularity of like what is specifically under that request, so that we can make sure that it meets the needs. And if it does have cost or significant staff time associated, then typically we would bring that to the council for an up or down recommendation. I see a hand, but I can't see it.
We've got Rita and
Rita.
Moreno, and then we have Councilmember Schaefer.
So just to give you like just a quick rough idea, we had about 15,000 people come to our city events. So that's like Summer Splash, Summer Stage, Holy, Earth and Arbor Day. That's not exact numbers on recycling events. That's counting stargazing. So that gives you a little bit of an idea. Yeah. So volunteer hours is a little bit more, you know. Yeah, but off the top of my head, can give you the estimate of that. So yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would like to see a little bit more granular information as far as, you know, cost and other information. However, I caution all of us on getting too detailed oriented, trying to get too much information. Not only would it take staff time, and I don't want to take, you know, too much staff time on this, but then I question, what do you do with that information? What really, how do you apply that? Or you know, the benefits that these events have to the city are so numerous that it's very difficult to provide cost benefit analysis. I don't think we have any business trying to do that. Not only do we get direct benefit to our businesses here as far as increased people and more awareness of what Duval has to offer, but we get other benefits, like people feel good about living here, right? And how can you put a dollar figure on that? Yeah, I mean, you really can't. So again, I'd like to see more information. I really think it ought to be very simple and very high level to keep staff time simple and, you know, and just, you know, create a better awareness for council.
We have Councilmember Seftel.
Yeah, I second what Councilmember Schaefer said. I mean, I've been in companies where you ask too much of an employee's time to manage, and you get down to 1/10 of an hour on a daily basis. And so they spend half a day recording how much time they spent working on a particular project. And then, you know, you look at the end of the week as to what got accomplished versus all the overhead that was put into accomplishing it. And you know, there's a lot of non-tangible benefits to the events that we have in Duval. I mean, you just can't quantify, you know, happiness. Okay, you can't put that into numbers. And so I think, you know, maybe a little bit more, but I really wouldn't want to see much time spent in trying to determine, you know, the cost of this, the overhead of that. I mean, I don't think we're in any danger of not having these events because of the amount of time and money that the city puts into it.
And I would just like to add on, you know, sort of my thanks to both Rita and Cynthia and the broader staff. You know, just in terms of what was presented tonight, albeit that didn't get into some of the monetary or sort of the personnel time, but you know what struck me is sort of the breadth of events, the diversity. You know, we had big and small events. There was an expansion of different venues that were targeting at different demographic groups, and even around some of the funding sources. So it was really just great to see the investment in time and connection and engagement. That's one of the things I think we talk about as a city, is the ways we can engage, and it's not a one size fits all. So just to see the breadth of smaller community events, in addition to engaging with some new communities. I mean, the Holly event, I think there was a lot of you know, appreciation that we did the outreach. We have new folks coming into the community as well, and sort of making them feel welcome. So again, kudos and appreciate the work that did go into this year, and looking forward to seeing what the next year brings. Any other comments from council?
One more from Councilmember Naplin.
Yeah, I just want to, before I go back to you, Jennifer, I just want to make sure no one else who
for sure.
hasn't had a chance to speak. I don't see any hands, so Councilmember Naplin.
Yeah, I just want to say estimates of this is, I mean, I would not want anyone spending a ridiculous amount of time tracking every penny and every hour. Stan McNabb, you had created some high level estimates before, and I felt like that was helpful and sufficient, perfectly sufficient. And all I was really asking for. My question was, I had heard some rumor that maybe the Art and Wine Walk may come next year. Is that just a rumor? I was feeling very excited because every business that I've ever talked to about events has said that drove people into their businesses and was just an amazing economic development type later. So anyway.
Yes, so if you recall back a year ago now, our Port of Seattle grant was awarded for 2 years. And so the first year was to fund the second year of the music crawl. And the second year of it is to fund the art and wine walk. And so there is $10,000 earmarked for the art and wine walk to partner with the Chamber of Commerce. So Rita has reached out to the chamber to begin those conversations. We should have started planning it yesterday or last month. Because it is an event that requires a lot of, it's going to require a lot of chief involvement to have wine in the public sphere like that, or any, spirits or anything like that. So yes, we have funding for it. I really hope our community partners get excited about doing it. To my knowledge, we haven't had a ton of response yet from our community partners about getting excited for planning it. The challenge with these events is Rita and I can do a lot, and we love to do a lot, but the way the Port of Seattle grant program works is the nonprofits that we put into our grant that say, we're going to do this, we have these nonprofit partners, they're going to lift it up and take it over the finish line, we're here to support. It really means that they need to lift up and support. And so I want to, in the next month, to get really clear and set expectations about the role Rita and I will play, as opposed to our community partners, because I do not want to be in a position in June where Rita and I are trying to single-handedly lift an art and wine walk by ourselves. So I think I've probably said enough about the art and wine walk.
Thank you.
Now we have Councilman Wood and then Schaefer.
Since we're talking about the art and wine walk, just a thought, I believe FIFA is also next year. And so coordinating schedules, so when alcohol is allowed in public, if it also can correspond at the same time that might be available for FIFA, that could be beneficial to the city.
Good point.
I don't know if you did that.
It's a state law that was passed during this last legislative session to allow flexibility for FIFA.
Wow.
We did have a nice chat with an individual today for the Cultural Commission, who got fairly excited. So as part of a grant, we were able to buy a movie screen. And I think we'll have a lot of opportunities to kind of put it on the field at Big Rock and maybe host some viewing parties too. So lots to come on how we can try to, do some programming around FIFA. But yes, so that's where we are with Art and Wine Walk. I'm excited about it. I think it would be great. And I don't want to have Rita and I working 80-hour weeks to do an Art and Wine Walk by ourselves.
And then Councilmember Schaefer.
Okay, thanks. Just a suggestion, we probably ought to think about a little bit more, maybe art, wine, and spirits type thing to be a little bit more inclusive of the breweries and distilleries and things like that we have here in town. But this is really exciting, So thank you.
And that was a great discussion. I appreciate the report. Our final item for discussion this evening is an update on emergency management from Luke Eckert, our emergency management coordinator. So I'll turn it over to you, Luke.
Perfect. Hello, Mayor, Council, staff, everyone. Great. So I want to update everyone on some of the emergency management activities we've been doing in the last year. Lots of fun stuff has been going on in the background. Next slide, please. So one of the big items we've been taking on a lot of activities in is staff training. So we've been doing general staff safety training. A lot of that is safe driving, emergency communications, first aid and CPR is a pretty big ticket item that we have gotten almost the majority of our staff, even those who aren't necessarily required to have first aid and CPR, to be able to have that certification. We're going to be doing another round of training coming up in 2 or 3 months from now. And those courses are also open to council if council would like to participate in the new year with that activity. We've been doing some cybersecurity training for some of our staff outside of IT. So our water and wastewater plant operators, as well as some additional trainings that Thomas has gone to help benefit the city's cybersecurity resiliency. I took my public information officer course this year, and we had Rita signed up for hers for, I think, how many? We've tried a few times, and then the government shutdown happened and the course had to be canceled. So we will get Rita into a new one soon. That course is very beneficial just for understanding the way public information is disseminated during emergency and disaster situations, so that we're making sure to be doing things correctly. Because bad and false information getting out in the wrong ways can be really detrimental to response capabilities. Next slide, please. Lots of regional coordination with different partner organizations. Here in the photo is a picture of a public information session of the reactivation of the Tolk Dam alarm. I'll talk a little bit more about the Tolk Dam for everyone's knowledge in a few slides. But we've also been doing a lot of work around evacuation planning, whether it's for wildfires or all hazard events, and then emergency alerting thresholds. What do we do internally? What do we call the county for? What level are IPAWs or wireless emergency alerts going out to phones, so that everybody kind of has a shared understanding of when and how those work, and then working with the public to try and get people signed up for any of the opt-in systems like Code Red or Alert King County. Next slide, please. With partner participation, I'll have a few slides for the King County 4x4 search and rescue, a pretty cool one relating to the Tolk Dam. But we've been working with the City of Carnation and the Citizen Corps on developing response procedures during like power outages and communication outages, just so everybody has line of communication together. And the Citizen Corps in the past has also, as you know, helped with events like tree lighting, traffic management, and various things. And then they also do training for our community members on emergency response, on household levels and preparedness. In this picture, so the top photo is a really interesting one. This is at a conference that I attended this year. It is a game based on a map of your own city. So this isn't our city, but it could be, where you take the resources you have in your city and respond to an incident. And it's kind of like a mix between Dungeons and Dragons, but like with dice rolling, but it's actually approved by FEMA as an exercise activity because it's realistic enough in the management of your assets and what can go wrong during an emergency situation. So pretty cool. And the bottom one is a Kirkland EOC during a functional exercise that I helped evaluate to watch a little bit bigger city EOC in action, but not so big that it's like Seattle or something, kind of getting a sense of some smaller cities and what we can do to improve our own operations. In an emergency operations center is a pretty helpful one. We did a winter preparedness seminar this year with the Citizen Corps Eastside Fire and Rescue. It was not very well attended. We had one participant from the public show up. So we're going to try and do a virtual one later in the year, and hopefully we'll have some better participation. But those are really good for getting community members to understand how our snow routes work, generator safety, where to put your grill during a power outage, just to avoid those additional calls and stressors during big power outages, like people burning their houses down or carbon monoxide poisoning, people driving on the roads when they're icy. And then a side note in here too, just rekindle the communication with North Bend, Snoqualmie, and Carnation. We have a joint emergency management organization. And the reason that was originally founded is EMPG funds, which are the Emergency Management Performance Grant funds, kind of leave smaller cities out because you can only get, it's like 50 something cents per person in your municipal population. And if it's under $10,000, you can't get it. So if you're a smaller city, you don't get any of those funds. So we have a joint one to combine all of our populations. And then we distribute those funds based on projects in the city each year for what we want to do. So the hope is that we have AM emergency radio transmission capabilities in the future. We were trying to use some of those funds for. We probably need additional funding. But if we had like a complete power outage, communications failure, and needed to communicate about the Tolk Dam or any other kind of evacuation situation, it would allow us to be able to communicate to those emergency radios that are in vehicles or like NOAA weather radios. If you've driven up I-90, I forget the frequency, but there's all the signs on the side of the road. There's emergency alerts. We'd be able to transmit on that frequency, which would be really unique. Next slide, please. There's a Tolk Dam work group right now. As many people have seen, there's all kinds of information out there about the Tolk Dam and what's going on with it. Some of it is accurate, some of it is speculation. And this work group's goal is to have a master point of contact and communication for a common operating picture of how the Tolk Dam emergency situation is handled. So just as an update for everyone, the alarms are back online, if you had not heard already. They are going to be tested annually, which coincides with the Be Dam Ready event where they practice an evacuation. And then they should be silently tested weekly, I believe. And then the exercise schedule for practicing a dam failure is going to continue to coincide with the Berkeley licensing, which I think I'm getting the 4 and 5 years mixed up. It's either 4 or 5 years because I'm thinking of the CEMP, which is the same range. Next slide, please. So bringing it back to the King County 4x4 Search and Rescue Partnership, this is a really cool exercise we did. So if you see on the map where the line starts on the left-hand side, that's the city. So if in the situation where a total dam failure were to happen, or the river is so flooded we can't get out on Woodinville Duval, this is an alternate route that we wanted to remap and validate whether it would work to be able to get vehicles through. So they joined with me and we drove the route and tested it and made a bunch of notes of where it is. You have to go through a bunch of gates that are locked, but our fire department does have a physical key on location to be able to get through all these. So this is a viable option during an emergency situation to get people, supplies, food, or evacuations in and out of the city, not going in the flood inundation zone from dam impacts. It's not open to the public, the road, so it would have to be a caravan situation with assistance of other agencies. But if you go to the next slide, if you look at the road, this is during the evacuation event. That's a super cool vehicle. No, it's not mine, I wish. The road is very, very accessible. You could drive it with anything. So if we did end up having to do like evacuations using school buses or anything to move large numbers of people, it's a viable option for that. So just kind of understanding what our resources are and how we could utilize them during a disaster instead of trying to figure out in the moment when everything's going poorly. Next slide, please. Some general security updates. So we installed some more cameras. I think we've already talked about, so there's a new one on City Hall on the side. There's one on each end of the Kermit Center. We are revamping the ones at the Big Rock Ball Field because their batteries have all died over age and they're not replaceable. So we're replacing those ones. There's access control coming into this building. It'll be a better keypad system that you can have like time codes on, so you can't access the building outside of your assigned time if you're renting the building. And then you can scan in, everybody here's probably seen that the staff have these new city badges, but you can scan in with those badges to be able to get into the buildings versus having a combo lock that a lot of people can kind of jostle with and be able to get into. In the meantime, what we've been doing is changing the combos on locks monthly instead of just having it be the same combination for a period of time. Because we've run into the situation where people who have previously rented the building have, entered the building to use the bathrooms or whatever kind of situation it is. So making sure that people who are not supposed to be authorized in the building aren't getting into the building. We have staff badging. So we've been keeping up with new staff and staff leaving have actual official ID badges. So if they're going onto a site or anything in the city or somebody's questioning, do they already have an official ID to be able to show to make it more sensible for that. And then in terms of cybersecurity, our IT team is super great. There are, however, areas in the city that IT does not manage, like the wastewater plants managed service provider. So we've signed up for CISA, which is the Cybersecurity Information Security Agency. It's under DHS. So they came in and did a big assessment with us, with our IT team, to be able to make some modifications to our systems to make them more secure. And now we're also signed up for cybersecurity monitoring with them, and they send a report every month to us if there's any known vulnerabilities. And then the MSISAC, more acronyms to know, great. The Multi-State Information Sharing and Coordination Group. There's a bunch of different ISACs. This one is primarily like municipalities, and if there's any cybersecurity vulnerabilities in like software that we use, or any attacks that are relevant to the industry of small municipalities, that gets sent out in this group, and then I forward it on to the IT team to make sure that they're up to date on the information. Like, for example, if there's a vulnerability in Google Chrome, if you go to like a few websites and Google Chrome needs to get updated, we can have IT patch that immediately, or whatever the software happens to be. And it's been a really great asset, and there's been a few that have come through that we've been able to patch immediately to prevent any kind of compromise in our systems. Next slide, please. This is one of the security systems we implemented a couple of years ago, but it's really dialed in now at Verkada. It's how we manage the majority of our cameras on the buildings. And it's the same system that does our access cards, and it's how we manage the doorway system so that you can only get in during certain times of day. Or like if we have an event over here, we lock down City Hall so that you can't get in. And there's different levels of access. So like staff that's not supposed to be in the buildings at 2 a.m. isn't in the buildings at 2 a.m. And it uses principle of least privilege to make sure that people are only having level of access that they need to be able to do their job effectively. Next slide, please. So this is kind of the big one coming up more in next council meetings, but hazard mitigation plan draft has been sent to FEMA, reviewed, approved. This is an annex on the King County hazard mitigation plan, which is kind of the same concept, but on a countywide level. So it has information about the characteristics of our city, and then all the municipalities in King County are also going to have the same thing. They all follow the same format. And then there's one for the county. And broadly, it goes over all the hazards that the city is exposed to. Next slide, please. And then not just the hazards, but what projects we have in place, either in the past, current, or hopes for the future on how we can manage those hazards. This on the right is a hazard map. So like lots of information about what kind of stuff we're exposed to as a good point of education. This map in particular is earthquake scenario for Seattle fault going if it was a magnitude 7.2, which is the expected max magnitude for that fault. Also programs that support hazard mitigation are out on the program. And then the main benefit for this, besides just education to know for prioritizing projects, is it does make us eligible for BRIC grants, more acronyms, Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities. These grants can be significant in funding if we find the right thing to be able to use it on. So hopefully having this adopted hazard mitigation plan will find some projects to start applying for this grant for. And I would absolutely adore to be able to get it because it can be big depending on the project. The hazard mitigation plan will go into public comment and put up for adoption next month at council. So there's some time for review, people to read it over and make comments. And then I had an intern this summer, Andy Jackson, who is a career firefighter here, who helped revise this plan. He also drafted a city evacuation plan that we haven't delved back into yet, but just like amazing work on his part to be able to help do all of this. Yeah, he worked for free. He is a college student getting his master's in emergency management, and just phenomenal work making sure this is readable and understandable and educational to the general public and our staff. Next slide, please. Updated policies. So in the employee handbook now, and I believe it was adopted at this point, but we have a safe driving policy. Yeah, okay. Safe driving policy. So just standards on how to drive and operate a vehicle safely. But one of the big benefits I'm happy about with this is a standard operating procedure as a guide for reporting. Like if you get an offender vendor or bump a city vehicle or anything like that, you can know the exact procedure of what you're expected to do as a staff member instead of any kind of guesswork around that. Next slide, please. We transitioned to FirstNet. This was a really big project that the city clerk's office was instrumental in helping get finished. So we have new phones, and the phones have priority over cellular networks that are congested. This is super helpful during emergencies, or like we've all been in power outages in Duval, and all the data dumps onto the towers, and phones are a lot slower, but the FirstNet phones have been, if you've had a power outage yet, I have. My FirstNet phone works great, and my personal phone is not working at all. So the FirstNet phones have been really great for that. And they were cheaper than the Verizon phones that we were on previously. Next slide, please. Good community outreach and events. So the main focus of our community outreach is typically household emergency level preparedness. Our opening line is, do you have an emergency kit at home and supplies to be able to stay during a power outage? And then we have lots of conversations with people about that. Because if there's an extended windstorm, power outage, big snowstorm again, the more members of our community that are prepared in their houses, the less resources drained with us having to stand up shelters or anything like that. So lots and lots of engagement at these events. And I remember 3 events, but I know I did like 5 this year. I can't remember whichever ones I did. Next slide, please. Laura and I were on, when Laura was here, the core planning team for the community wildfire protection plan. I know there's been talk about insurance non-renewals in Duval for wildfire danger has been one of the concerns of the community. We asked to participate in this because the entirety of Duval is in the wild and urban interface, which basically just means that there is potential for wildfire, right? And with increasing wildfire danger and longer dry spells during the summer, we wanted to make sure that we could help with this plan and make sure that smaller cities that are kind of on the edge of the county, more into the WUI, the wild and urban interface, have some input on the way the plan goes. And that's fully drafted. So if anybody wants to go in and have a look, it's hosted on the county website, and you can make comments, I think, still for a while for input would be really great. And then this is one of the public outreach meetings that we had in the Duval Fire Station on the bottom photo. Lots of community members came out to voice opinions, and on the top is one of the educational materials they have on home hardening as a guide for community members that are in the wooded areas. Because it's not just people think about protecting, and it's not just cutting down trees. There's like underbrush and just other aspects of fire hardening your house that are not cutting trees. So as a side note, that's what people's perception is. Next event, please. Special event safety planning. So emergency management is reviewing special event permits now, which has been really helpful just to see if there's any safety concerns that might be a little outside of the normal purview, like evacuations or extreme weather kind of things. So we do have a guiding document for now, and hopefully when the new policy is updated, we'll have a little bit more solidified practice on this. But any larger scale events are expected to have a special event safety plan submitted with their event to make sure that the event organizers are also considering what kinds of things can go wrong during events, and make sure that they have practices in place for how to manage that. So it's not just on the city to try and help them if they don't have an organizational structure to accommodate them. Next slide, please. The AED program is ongoing. We're doing monthly inspections. We just did a huge round of replacing expired pads that just were coming out of date here, and batteries. Some of the ones in the police cars were starting to go bad early, just from the temperature variations that they can have in the trunk of a police car. So those are going, they're all registered with the county now, which was asked for. So if you look here on the right, this is the Pulse Point app, which a lot of people use in this area, and you can see where AEDs are located. Not all of those are ours. Some are the library and school district buildings, but all of ours are on there as well. And the one for Big Rock is going to be installed. I've had it for a little bit. It's just, we've been waiting for the cameras to be replaced first to make sure that it's secure. Next slide, please. Continuing communication stuff. So social media access, especially around, from my aspect, is like road closures or emergency alerts or weather warning. We communicate a lot with WashDOT, King County roads. So if there's any known massive traffic impacts, we try and get information out to the community about those. Keeping up to date with our 800 megahertz radios. That's one of our backup lines of communications with King County. Those have been updated a couple times this year through the PCERN system. And then, yeah, the city website, there's a few cool systems that we've been experimenting with pop-up pages. So if there's an emergency and you go to the website, the only thing you can see basically is a link to the emergency thing, unless you click out of it, and it directs you to a page with more information, which is really helpful. And that coincides with the rollout of the Duval City app that can put out the same kind of emergency alerts. Next slide, please. Then another big thing we've really delved into this year is weather monitoring. So not just like your standard Weather Underground or whatever application that people use, but we have a direct line of communication with the National Weather Service through a Slack channel. And I include this email because this is a really good one. So the river flooding forecast gauge wasn't working during a potential flooding event a few weeks ago. And I reached out to them directly, and it was fixed within 5 minutes to be able to make sure that we knew what the crest of that river flood was going to be. And then I send out bi-weekly weather updates just with normal weather. But if there's extreme weather events or anything like that, I see them out more frequently. And then communicate with Joe and Steve and the crews about if we want to staff up or staff down, and then reach out if there's extreme weather about our inclement weather policy and whether people should be going home early if there's any kind of bad weather expected. It's been super great, and anybody in the city is welcome to sign up for these weather emails that I put out, but you just gotta email me and ask, and I'll add you to the list. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's the gist of it. I'll go on.
Any questions for Luke? That was a great presentation. Appreciate it.
In the back.
Well, we've got, I think, I do, and Councilmember Olin. Councilmember Olin, do you want to go first?
A brief question, and thank you for the presentation. I read all the materials. It was very comprehensive and deep, and I appreciate that. One thing that I didn't see, which may be rolled up into something else. I mean, I saw continuity plans, continuity of operations. I saw SOPs, I saw staff training. But I didn't see anything specifically about staffing in urgent scenarios. And I just, I went to this emergency management forum. And that was one of the things they talked about, was making sure you know specifically who's on first shift, second shift, third shift, because people are gonna be exhausted and tired. You always want fresh minds ready to go. And so I just, since I didn't see it, wanted to make sure that was in there somewhere. Or to mention it so you put it in there somewhere.
Yeah, essentially it's not directly mentioned, but it's implied in the CEMP who stood up for that EOC, and then like the logistics section would handle, or the planning section rather, would handle the future staffing needs. So what we put in those, wearing those hats in that situation would be how we manage it if it was an extended event going over one operational period, essentially.
Okay.
And to add to that too, kind of like COVID, public works, it's not an option to come to work. It's an option to not, you have to get released to come from work, you have to come to work or get released. Otherwise it's not asking, is it safe enough to come in? It's like, we get in, and if you can't get in, we need to know why. We're here all the time.
Yeah.
Regardless of an event, we always have on call. We have on call for sewer, and we have on call for regular public works 24/7, 365. So we're always on call. We get called out more than anybody would expect. Events are different, and you wouldn't have anything specifically called out in our CEMP relative to how we're gonna operate, but there's a plan in the background.
Yeah, I guess that's more for known events versus unknown events. Luckily, like the majority of our events are known days or ahead of time, but if it's an unknown event.
Yeah, even for like next weekend, if we had weather, we would have an expectation. We'd have a quick staff huddle of some sort. Like, hey, who's around next week? You get your own call person. You get Thursday through Sunday. We have 4 days of no work. So who's going to be around? We have kind of a list of what we can expect should something hit the fan.
Great.
And I did have a question. Luke said we a lot. There's no we. Just
Yeah.
I was me or I could be all of me.
I just wanted to say, Luke, this is incredible. I am continue to be just impressed and thrilled at every report you make. The amount of work and updating that you've gotten done in your short 2 years here is absolutely incredible. You came here with a strong background, professional emergency management background. And I think just in the short 2 years, you have really demonstrated why it is so critical for small cities to have somebody like you on board doing this work, because it's not just the emergency management stuff. It's things like the safety trainings that unless you have a dedicated person to it, it's not getting done, which puts the city at both legal and financial risk, as well as it puts our employees at risk. And you've done the work to make sure that we have processes and plans and procedures and schedules in place to make sure that we stay compliant. In addition, all of the emergency management things that you've done and the relationships that you've built in this region in such a short period of time don't go unnoticed. And there is no doubt that Duval is beginning to stand out as a community that is extraordinarily prepared as a result of all of that effort that you put into it. I know that you have help from others with getting some of these things done, but the overwhelming majority of the effort, the work, and the knowledge comes from everything that you do. And I just want to express my gratitude for that and the fact of knowing that our city is now in a better place than it ever has been to manage the small emergencies and the big emergencies coming forward. Especially, we've been talking about that exit route for years. And to run an exercise to show that it actually works for everyone and it will work and have a plan in place is absolutely incredible. And it really just dramatically improves the safety of our community. And so my heartfelt gratitude for everything you've done.
One more.
Councilmember Naplin was first.
Sorry.
And
Yeah,
then
totally.
Yeah, that's great. That's exciting. The weather updates, is that available to the community as well, or just kind of internally, or how is that used?
I haven't done it to the community yet. If it's
Internal.
Internal, okay, that's what I wasn't sure. Okay, so my actual comment, I just wanted to clarify that, is super excited about the Big Rock AED. I've been hoping for that for several years now. And I just wanted to share that I took my son to the Nick of Time. They do these several times a year where you can be screened. Young athletes are at risk for sudden cardiac arrest, and it's pretty serious. And that was the reason I wanted to have the AED at the Big Rock Ballpark. And just hopefully the community can learn more about that. I don't know if that's something we can share via the city channel. But they screen the kids, they go through a whole bunch of different things. There's doctors there, they do a EEG, or I can't remember what it's called. But the amazing thing is they also teach kids how to use an AED and how to do CPR, and they even practice it. So anyway, a super amazing program, but it got me thinking that we'll have an AED, but I bet there's, you know, the coaches and the different people who are using Big Rock Ballpark, they may not feel comfortable using it, even though it's actually extremely easy. So anyway, I just was thinking, you know, when that gets launched, I don't know if it'd be possible to partner with the fire department or maybe one of the other groups to have a training for our, you know, coaches and other people who are using Big Rock Ballpark. I know when I did it with the school district for some volunteer work I did, there was like an online you know, training that you did ahead of time for the AED. And then the actual in-person training of using the AED was really just demonstrating that you knew how to do it. So it wasn't a huge amount of effort. A lot of it, like I said, was done ahead of time. So I don't know if that's something that the city would be interested in doing, but I just thought, wow, if we have an AED up at Big Rock, I would really want people to feel comfortable using it if the worst case scenario happens and they need to use it. So anyway, I just wanted to share that.
Councilmember Schaefer, you were.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. First of all, I just want to reiterate what Mayor Arklander said. This is amazing progress compared to where we were a couple of years ago. And this is exactly the reason the council decided to move forward and fund your position and get this type of thing done. With the, you know, with global warming, with other environmental hazards happening, it's not a matter of if they'll happen, it will happen to Duval. This happened to my community I moved from Colorado. We lost 1,000 homes overnight, one night, in a wildfire. And so we need to be prepared here. The same thing could happen here. It's absolutely critical that we have everything that you talked about in place. It will save lives, it will save property. As far as cybersecurity is concerned, just a comment on that. These aren't garage hackers we're worried about anymore. These are highly sophisticated, highly funded organizations, typically by foreign governments, that want to cause real harm. And these are really, really smart, well-trained people. It's absolutely critical that we stay on top of that. We can't even imagine the type of harm they can. You know, they can do more than just whatever, shut our water off. They can cause real damage, potentially resulting in loss of life. So we have to be on top of that always. So again, kudos for for that type of thing. Again, that'll save us. So thank you.
And I don't know if there's any more questions. I just wanted to add, one thing to Councilmember Schaefer's comment. I know there's been a lot of questions in the community at various points around, where the city invests, why we invest, the staffing that we've brought onto the city, and sort of the value, the ROI we get out of that. So, again, kudos on the report. I think it was comprehensive. It sort of touched all the bases, both sort of the more likely to the least likely, and I think you really need to prepare for all of those. I know you do have a sort of a link off the city website, Luke, in terms of some of the reports that have been done, some of the preparations. I mean, this is the kind of thing that I would love that we communicate out to the community and city council, and hopefully we have lots of folks that watch these meetings and will have seen that presentation. But I don't know if there's a a form of this that you plan to post online or sort of more a more consumable version, but I would love, that the community have the same level of awareness that the council has had in terms of this work and these investments we've made and how that's going to make the community more resilient. So if you've already done that, that's great. If not, that's sort of I would, again, part of that community outreach and engagement that I think we're all trying to do more of.
Then we had, Mayor Person, we had Director Lenishevsky wanted to make a comment.
Yes. Sorry, I have the tiny view. I can only see the
That's why I'm here to help.
Some of the things on your ROI comment, Luke's trained and certified for several different types of trainings that he then hosts internally for all staff. So, my group or anybody in any of the offices doesn't have to leave town to go take the first aid, CPR, AED. Luke's a certified flying instructor now. Like we're saving our own time by having one person kind of head it up. And I didn't see it on there, like the safety committee, the citywide safety committee, which is all departments. He's managing and running that. So we have common procedures. Everybody knows what's going on, whatever safety procedures that are old or redundant or needing updating. Like that's discussed, whether it's police, public works, or office operations. If you haven't, when Luke's offered to take one of his courses, this is the longest he sat and wasn't, animated with the trainings. He is a good trainer and does keep you engaged. It is very animated. So, keeping him seated is keeping me seated. It's just different reasons. He likes being animated and I'm just fidgety. I think there's a lot of good things with the role we didn't really anticipate. Which is nice to have someone spearheading those things. And he's a resource for anybody, for any, office safety, workplace safety, OSHA. He may not be an expert, but his trainings are helping everybody go somewhere and get the information they need. And not to mention FEMA training. So he's keeping tabs on that. We have our own internal staff meeting today. The list will be coming if we need what when, but hopefully everybody's in a good place. It is a nice resource to have Luke running that part of our group. And he fits in very well and very open to comments and is always available 24/7, kind of like the rest of us. So we're happy for that.
Any other questions or comments from council? Now I can see you all. So seeing that, I know we have the one item remaining on the committee of the whole agenda is the good of the order. I know we had a little bit of that conversation at the beginning of the meeting. Are there any additional good of the order that individual council members want to bring to the floor? Councilmember Napwin?
Thanks. I had sent an email about a month ago about sort of a follow-up on a constituent concern about, I don't want to delve too far into details, but the gist of it is I was trying to understand the city's role and how the police manages situations where, there's a dispute between two parties and, the police keep getting drawn in, if they're harassment, something like that. Anyway, I had sent it in and I was told it would be sent to Chief Keller and I haven't heard a response. And so I just wasn't sure if that was still forthcoming. There have been other memos in the packet. And so I just wasn't sure if maybe, I don't know.
I'll defer to the city administrator. The
Yeah. It did slip my mind. So to be fully transparent, and I would say Chief, between not being at council meetings and having quite a bit on his plate. So the CJTC certification, the grant certification, civil service rules, those were prioritized. But we can come back on December 2nd and have a conversation about that.
Okay.
Yes, I didn't receive it.
It's okay. Okay, so you'll get it forwarded. Okay, perfect.
And I would just note that we typically don't discuss specific cases in public.
No, I think we can
especially
talk
if-
about operational
Yeah.
requirements while we do.
My email is very much in that line.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll be good.
Yeah, just thank you.
Any other items for the good of the order? So I know we have about 15 minutes, 10 minutes, if we build in a buffer. I know, City Administrator, it sounds like you've got sort of there's a number of things that could stretch that out. I know the mayor typically likes to do her report as part of council. We could use 10 minutes if there were any council reports that we wanted to get in as part of the committee of the whole. Or there may not be any, in which case we can take a little longer break this evening.
I'm happy to give an update on the comp plan issue.
Oh, that's great. If you want
I
to
don't
go
have
through
anything prepared, so it's kind of off the cuff remarks, but I can absolutely give an update.
then I will turn it over to the city administrator.
Okay, so we got our appeal on September 1st. And on the 30th, we had our first kind of activity in the docket in front of the Growth Management Board, which was a pre-hearing conference. And that set the litigation schedule for the appeal. However, before the pre-hearing conference, Oscar and I met with the Department of Commerce and the State Attorney General's office. The Department of Commerce doesn't have an interest in making, I'm going to paraphrase their remarks. Their effort is not to make an example out of the city of Duval. They really would like us to just come into compliance with comp plan and prepare a work plan that shows that we understand what the requirements of the comp plan are relative to our land capacity analysis, and to present to them a work plan that will identify all of the different requirements that are needed to basically have a compliant comprehensive plan. So in the spirit of collaboration and negotiation, we filed for an extension of the timelines for the appeal. It was granted. That gives us 90 days to do some work, which I'll get to that. The way that the extensions work from the Department of Commerce is we can continue to do 90-day extensions for a period of time. So there's no deadline on how many extensions we can have, so that the city can not only present a work plan to Commerce that's comprehensive, but that City Council can also do its work, because the work ahead is hard. And so Commerce is well aware that it's going to take some time. And so we anticipate probably a series of 90 days extensions. They have to be filed every 90 days. As long as Commerce knows that we're working and that we are being mindful of what they've asked us to do, it is assumed that they will grant those 90-day extensions. So that's kind of the appeal itself. So in those 90 days, what have we done? So we have a work team. That's myself, Larissa. Thank you, Steve, for giving me so much of Larissa's time. And Oscar and a senior planner with Burke, who we've used before, who is helping from an independent third-party perspective identify what is needed to build that work plan. And so Larissa and I have met along with Oscar probably at this point about 5 times. We met again today. We are fairly close to having the comprehensive work plan, which kind of operates like a punch list of everything that we need to do to meet the capacity analysis that Commerce said we didn't do. So it comes in a couple parts. It's basically a 3-part process. One is an outline of what you will do. And that means we will, rezone, potentially upzone. We will identify barriers to affordable housing. We will fix those barriers. It may end up requiring another GIS layer to be put over everything, which is a separate conversation. So we have to tell Commerce exactly the steps we are going to take to meet the requirements that we didn't meet initially. So that's kind of the punch list work plan that's under development. I think we're at page 12. That's getting refined right now. We should have a final, probably according to our meeting today, we probably will have a final of that in a week. The next step then is to take that to Commerce, show it to Commerce and say, is this what you had in mind? If Commerce blesses it, then we bring it to council, show council, because I don't want to bring it to you if Commerce says, that's not at all what we had in mind, go back to the drawing board. I don't want to waste your time. So we hope to be through that process by December. And then at the first council meeting in January, be able to present that work plan to council. That's step one. The second step is we are, as part of the work team, developing the work product. We will have an example zoning map that will show you exactly how we can get to our housing and jobs numbers. We got there today. We have a scenario that will work. There is an element that we are going to have to deviate from King County. It's justifiable. But we are going to, so King County, I'm having to learn a lot on the fly about planning, so I'm not a planner. But in 2001, King County presented kind of how they calculated kind of market ratio. But they also had all these alternatives in their guidance. We're going to take one of the alternatives as our standard in order to meet our jobs and housing number. And we'll have a cover memo that shows why that's justified. So as of today, we think we can get there. We were surprised though to learn about a month ago that as we've talked about the comp plan for the last 2 years, we had never actually inquired with the county if the county counted our urban growth area towards their capacity. We've assumed that we can use the growth area to meet our capacity. King County counted it as theirs. So we found out that about a month ago. So it goes kind of back to the drawing board. And what we now have to do is make sure that all of our capacity has to be in the city right now. So, would have been a good question to ask at some point, but we got there and we're here. So that the new zoning map and designation that will get us to our housing numbers and get us to our job numbers with 50 extra surplus on the jobs numbers will also be presented as part of that package to council in January. And then the third element, which was missing from the work we did with the comp plan, and the Commerce guidance wasn't terribly clear. So Commerce put all this guidance together about what we should have done or what cities need to do. But as a result of the Mercer Island case, which was referenced in the article in the Kitsap County one, who kind of, and Clydesdale, who have found themselves in the same place we are, and Bainbridge Island come, I think, is they didn't develop explicit, clear guidelines on the policy that had to go with the land capacity analysis. And so Larissa has done an incredible job of what we now have to do is go through all of our code, identify every single barrier to affordable housing that exists in our code, and then put together a detailed plan about how we will rectify that barrier. And that must also be approved by Commerce. So good news in the last 3 months is the team and I have worked on creating deadlines for that regulatory work. And so what we've now done, we've learned kind of what those requirements are, but the planning team has plans now to do that work anyway. So one is coming to council on the next council meeting, which is co-living and parking. That is a barrier that we must fix. We will not pass the appeal if we don't fix it. Impact fees coming to council next week or next meeting. And then some of our design guidelines relative to building height is another one. So we're doing that work right now too. It's a fairly exhaustive process because we have to go through all of our development regulations and identify every single barrier to affordable housing. So that's the package. I probably spend about 8 to 10 hours every week right now, kind of working on the appeal issues. Larissa spends more, but we're getting there. And so I think by the first meeting in January, if not that, the second meeting, we will be able to present to council the whole package of items that will help us with our appeal. Did that answer your question?
It helps a lot. Yes, yes. I have a couple more
Okay.
questions for you. What about reconciliation? Where do we stand on that?
So also sticky note on my computer, we must file for reconciliation before the end of the year. So luckily King County and Snow Palmy both gave me their documents on how to file. So I don't know how to file for reconciliation, but I'm learning. So by the end, we have to by the end of the year get on the docket for next year. We did ask Commerce in our first negotiation meeting with them that if they kind of philosophically believed that it was mutually exclusive to do the work on the appeal, which says kind of fundamentally, we accept that these are the numbers we have to get to, and also go through reconciliation. And they said, no, you can go through the reconciliation process while also managing your appeal. At some point, you're probably going to hit a place where, you know, the train tracks cross over each other. But they said it's fine. Go through the King County reconciliation process while also trying to manage the appeal. There are some things, it doesn't matter what our numbers are. The state has said that we will remove barriers to affordable housing. So we have to do that work anyway. The question just is, to what degree do we incentivize in certain zones affordable housing to get to our numbers? But yes, we can do them together without Commerce feeling like we're not taking it seriously.
Thank you. Yeah, the other question, none of this would this is the question. None of this would require us to annex additional residential land. Is that correct?
So we must do this work for Commerce with the land we already own. And that's good news and bad news. So good news, if you don't want to annex, is we can't annex because county those numbers for theirs. Bad news is now we have to find all the capacity in the city, which is likely going to require some probably fairly difficult decisions around upzoning. So.
And yeah, thank you, Cynthia. Thank you for all the work you've done. I know this has to be not only time consuming, but difficult in many ways. The comment really for the council's ears, and you know, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but what the county and what the state is doing to Duval will change the character of Duval. It's not going to make Duval a better place. It's going to create a more transient population. It's going to result in increased crime. It's going to result in Duval being a less safe place to live. We, the council, have to take any action we possibly can here. Now, I realize we have to follow law. Not suggesting that we violate state law or county regulations or anything else, but we are not powerless in what we have in front of us either. So this is going to take some courage on our part, but we need to fight this as much as we possibly can under the law. We want to keep Duval as a small. I mean, did I go on too long?
Well, I was just going to bring you to a close here because we're going to have this conversation
I'm done.
at the next meeting. And I want to give folks an opportunity to have a little break before the council meeting. We're 2 minutes till the hour. So if I may, I'm going to adjourn the committee of the whole meeting at 7:58 p.m. Mayor, I don't know if 4-minute break, maybe 2 minutes after, or 3 minutes.
We've got a busy agenda. We'll do a 3-minute.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Good evening. I'd like to call the Tuesday, November 18th, Duval City Council meeting to order. If you would all please rise and join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Yes. Mayor Oberlander.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mercer.
Here.
Councilmember Olin.
Here.
He's
here.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Here.
Councilmember McHenry.
Here.
Councilmember Supple.
Here.
Councilmember Naplin.
Here.
Councilmember Kufelt.
Thank you. We have quorum. Are there any additions or corrections to this evening's agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving this evening's agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. With that, we're going to move on to proclamations, but before we do proclamations, I do want to note we've got a pretty heavy agenda tonight with budget items, and we do have two of our members who have probably had a very long travel day to Salt Lake City with early morning meetings for the National League of Cities tomorrow. So if we can keep to the topics and specific questions and answers, that would be ideal so that we can get through this agenda and get them some sleep so they can be fresh for learning and networking tomorrow. That would be greatly appreciated. All right, we have three proclamations this evening. First one we have is Transgender Day of Remembrance, and I will read that into the record. Whereas the City of Duval is a community that values every individual and is committed to fostering kindness, dignity, and respect for all people, regardless of their gender identity or expression. And whereas the Transgender Day of Remembrance, observed annually on November 20th, honors the memory of transgender and gender diverse individuals whose lives have been lost to acts of anti-transgender violence. And whereas this day serves as a solemn reminder of the ongoing struggle faced by transgender people to live authentically and safely, and of the need for communities everywhere to stand against hate, discrimination, and violence in all forms. And whereas the City of Duval acknowledges the bravery, resilience, and strength of transgender individuals who, despite the challenges, continue to enrich our community with their unique talents, perspectives, and contributions. And whereas it is through our collective understanding, compassion, and commitment to education that we can create a more inclusive society where everyone is free to live openly and with pride without fear or prejudice. And whereas the City of Duval stands in unity with our transgender residents, friends, family members, and neighbors in remembrance, solidarity, and hope for a future defined by equality and mutual respect. Now, therefore, I, Amy Oberlander, Mayor of the City of Duval, hereby proclaim November 20th, 2025 as Transgender Day of Remembrance in the City of Duval. I encourage all residents to join in honoring the lives lost, supporting those who live courageously every day, and reaffirming our shared commitment to compassion, acceptance, and understanding. And I would also like to note that this community is going through additional harm as we speak with the federal government revoking passports and U.S. citizens being unable to leave the country. I have a colleague who has multiple friends that this is happening to today in Washington State. And I think this is something we all need to be paying attention to. It's the devaluing and dehumanizing of American citizens who all deserve the same protections under the law that the rest of us do. This is happening under the radar and it's not being publicized much, but I wanted to bring that to the council's attention for those that aren't aware that this is really serious. And it's possible that it won't stop there. The latest word from the federal government is that this may happen to anybody that the government decides should not have a passport. And so this is where it starts. And this is also one of the most marginalized communities, and we need to be there to support them as they're dealing with fear of even leaving our own community today. So thank you for that. Our second proclamation today is Thanksgiving Day. Whereas Thanksgiving is a time to gather in gratitude, to celebrate the blessings that fill our lives, and to honor the bonds that make our community strong. And whereas in the City of Duval, we give thanks for family and friends, neighbors and volunteers, educators and first responders, all who lift up our community with their care, generosity, and dedication. And whereas this day calls us to pause and reflect on the abundance of our lives, to recognize the simple joys and the quiet acts of kindness that weave the fabric of our city. And whereas Thanksgiving reminds us that our greatest wealth lies not in possessions, but in the connections we share, the compassion we extend, and the love we give to one another. And whereas it is a time to reach out with open hearts to those in need, to celebrate togetherness, and to cherish the diversity and spirit that make Duval a welcoming home for all. Now, therefore, I, Amy Okerlander, Mayor of the City of Duval, hereby proclaim November 28th, 2025 as Thanksgiving Day in the City of Duval. I encourage all residents to gather with gratitude, to share generously, and to embrace the warmth of the community that surrounds us. And finally, as we are coming up on Small Business Saturday, we have a proclamation for Small Business Saturday. Whereas small businesses are the heart of our community, providing unique goods and services, creating jobs, and contributing to the character and vibrancy of our neighborhoods. And whereas the City of Duval celebrates the creativity, entrepreneurship, and dedication of our local business owners, whose efforts strengthen our local economy and enrich our daily lives. And whereas supporting small businesses fosters community connections, encourages sustainability, and helps maintain the distinct charm and character that make Duval a special place to live, work, and visit. And whereas Small Business Saturday offers an opportunity for residents and visitors alike to acknowledge and support the remarkable businesses that contribute to our city's identity, prosperity, and sense of community. Now, therefore, I, Amy Okerlander, Mayor of the City of Duval, hereby proclaim November 30th, 2025 as Small Business Saturday in the City of Duval. I encourage all residents to shop locally, support our entrepreneurs, and celebrate the unique spirit of our community. Right, and now we'll move on to comments from our audience, and I will read the procedure into the record for the public's benefit. During the designated public commentary period at City Council meetings, individuals are allotted 3 minutes to speak, while representatives of organizations may address the council for up to 5 minutes. Before presenting, kindly disclose your full name and city of residence. Each speaker and all remarks shall be addressed to the City Council as a body and not to individual members of council or staff. The city strongly advises submitting verbal comments in writing to expedite subsequent correspondence. Written comments must be received by the city clerk's office by noon on the meeting day, addressed to P.O. Box 1300 Duval, Washington 98019, or deposited at the City Hall drop box located at 15535 Main Street Northeast, or by email. Please be aware that the City Council, its boards, and its commissions accept public comments only from in-person attendees at the meeting. The Council does not accept handouts or printed material during public commentary sessions. Information intended for the mayor or the City Council shall be directed to the city clerk, who will disseminate it following the submitter's instructions. Upon receipt, the city clerk will receive written public comments and subsequently furnish them to the City Council or the boards or commission. However, it's important to note that written comments will not be orally presented during the council or applicable board or commission meetings. Any written comments received after the noon deadline for written comments will be shared with the council at the next council meeting as part of the city clerk's report. And with that, do we have anyone here for public comment?
We don't hear.
Is there anyone in the audience that signed up to speak? All right, thank you. Now we'll go ahead and move on to approval of our consent agenda. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move for the agenda.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Now we'll move on to schedule items. First up, mayor's report. Just want to remind council that tomorrow is the last Snoqualmie Valley Governance Association of the year. If anyone would like to carpool, let me know. I'd love to ride out with anybody out to the casino. It should be nice at the new hotel there out in Snoqualmie. It'd be nice to support our tribal partners out there. And then we have the coming up, I think it's either the 1st or 3rd of December, we have the Sound Cities Association annual networking dinner and meeting. So I hope to see many of you there as well. And that concludes my report. And we'll turn it to the city administrator for the remainder of her report.
Great. Good evening, council, mayor, members of the community who may be watching. Cynthia McNabb, city administrator. So here to present a report at this council meeting, and the first thing we'll do is turn it over to Public Works for the Public Works update with Director Laniszewski.
Good evening, Mayor, council, staff, citizens, Steve Laniszewski, Public Works. Slide one there, just, it hasn't gone out on social media today, it will tomorrow, but I think it was today. Social. So ADA transition plan, so we have the, our ADA transition plan will include a reconnaissance of town as well as a map forward identifying our ADA barriers and then helping us formulate a plan for how we move past the barriers we have. The citywide inventory of every sidewalk in town is complete. This is part of the transpo contract, so they are now in the public information gathering phase. So there is a survey you can take, share with your friends and anybody you know, but we will be pushing that online as well. So that is open and pretty exciting. Next slide. We're planning for early next year, the biosolid handling contract. So wastewater treatment plant creates biosolids, which is part of the wastewater process. Biosolids currently are trucked over to Eastern Washington. There's a really good video on King County solid waste loop. If you just look up LOE, you can get a quick video. Very interesting and informative. It's a great program, but nonetheless, we have to haul it over there. So we do have an annual contract for that. So 2 year with a 1 year opener. That will go out in January for presentation here at some point for signing in, I think March is our timeframe. We are under the estimate of what we originally thought. We were going to be above $300,000 per our estimate in our contract for the 3 years. And we are well under that. Part of that was one, we were under construction for a bit, so our processes were not creating as much biosolids and how it's managed. But then two, the new biosolids management system dewaters much more than previous systems we had in place that we replaced last year. So we're processing more waste, but we're creating less byproduct because our old byproduct was very wet. It was more of putting consistency, and now more of a coffee ground. Kind of think of it that way. But anyway, that's going out. Just a heads up on that. Next slide. TIB, their grant award announcements come this Friday, usually at the lunch hour. So Transportation Improvement Board, Washington State, run that. It is a separate entity for grants only. They don't do any other work other than process grants for road activities. They have several different lines of business in their programming. Next slide. One is the active transportation program. So we applied for some gap sidewalk fill-ins that are on our plan. So this is 150th, just east of the 275th intersection, and that is the south side of the road in front of a couple subdivisions that didn't have sidewalks. We would be looking at an alternative to a traditional concrete sidewalk in the area that has some nice trees we proposed to keep. Nonetheless, we have a $670,000 grant request with a $168,000 match from the city. That's project one, and that's the active transportation program. Next slide. Project two is complete streets program. So we're not competing against ourselves in any one pool of money. We're eligible for different pools of money, and this is the sidewalk gap on Big Rock Road between the new constructed road getting access to Two Moons Parks as well as 275th along Big Rock. We're going after $904,000 in grant with a $226,000 city match. Fingers crossed. And we do not currently have any roads eligible for the pavement preservation program. So our transportation benefit district funding for overlays right now will be sole funded by the city moving forward. Next slide. And on that note, our pavement preservation program internally, so the TBD funds our overlay program. So we are designing right now, this is the Parkwood Estates neighborhood, bounded by Big Rock Road, 279th, and then 142nd on the north side by the Duval Hamlet Mobile Home Park. That will be bid probably later in the spring, early summer for a summer pave. Late in the summer as possible. That is a very wet neighborhood, high water table, and fairly substandard construction. So that's going to be an exciting project because if you haven't driven through there, certainly one of the worst, if not the worst, road section in town. Next slide. Current items, two here, we have the RFQ for the updated Public Works Maintenance and Operations Center that was issued on October 14th, closed on November 4th. We had 10 submittals, one non-compliant with submittal standards, so we have 9 to choose from. The preliminary review yielded 4 teams, architecture development teams that will be interviewing. So that contract will be coming probably early next year for the Maintenance and Operations Center on a new piece of land on the south edge of the Big River Park expansion. Next slide, a couple of images from some of the submitters RFP. And just giving you a flavor for, what we may expect. These are all local projects in the region. Next slide. Well, images just to share what you might expect to see. And then next slide. I think there was some social media on some salmon, I won't say recovery efforts because why, I don't know. I'm probably too busy or not enough people to check, but we have had some staff checking out creeks and rivers, and you saw the salmon from 2 weeks ago. I had walked it one day with the dogs, found nothing. The next day, video that is right here showed another salmon. This is the Thayer Creek section just east of the treatment, or just west of the treatment plant. If you walk the little trail, it gets you to the Snoqualmie Valley Trail. So caught my eye getting from the lower pool to the pool right below the bridge, and then right in. So the salmon are here. It's very exciting to see. For that note, last but not least, the Big Rock Phase 2 design, we'll bring that next week, or next meeting, December 2nd, to share. Currently out, we're trying to lock down the footprints so we can begin to dive into all this consultant types of work that will be mechanical, electrical, lighting, and all that. So that'll be pretty exciting. We have a menu of things we had when we started the project. Most things will fit. It's always cost, but we'll bring the layout we have. Great news, all the sensitive area work is done, so we can have our final lay of the land and bring that forward to council. So that'll be exciting. And I think with that, I am done. Any comments?
Mayor Pro Tem, we have Councilmember Nathaniel's hand. Hi, Terry. Oh, you're right. All day.
You're in autopilot mode, but appreciate it.
Are you sure you don't want to run the meeting there? No. Councilmember Nathaniel had the question for Director Laniszewski.
I was excited to see the salmon, and I walked that little trail that kind of goes behind. Is there a little culvert that it goes under the path?
It's a bridge structure.
Oh, there is. I'm just trying to remember. Anyway, it made me think that's the same stream that would head up to Rosenbach Corner. Is that right? Have we had any progress on getting some of those plantings replaced that were didn't make it?
Some have been cleaned up, but please remember WACA is coming to rebed the culvert under 203, and they haven't done that yet. So they'll be carving out that corner, and we don't know exactly how far. But they were going to do it this fall prior to the rains, but they didn't make it.
Okay.
So, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's tidying up now. We put in we didn't celebrate the banner poles, the little banner poles, the 2 extra banner poles that Cultural Commission had hoped for, or not, but one is on that corner. But yeah, no, nothing new planted, but just clean up down there.
Are they planning on replanting?
Well, we're not going to touch it until the state's done. But
But
we'll
then
look at it when
after
they're
that,
done. Yeah.
that's when it will happen. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Any other questions for Director Laniszewski? Seeing none, we'll move on.
Okay. A couple quick slides for community development. So the first is I just want to highlight some of the work that the building division has been working on lately. So they have created some informational materials for the business and development community, but particularly geared towards small business and individuals to be more explanatory about what's required through various building permits and building applications. So we have on our website now a list of submittal requirements with some checklists and FAQs to help the community kind of better manage the process. It can be kind of cumbersome. So just wanted to show you this and the good work that they're doing. Next slide. Update on Adventure Community Church. They are through drywall inspection. And so only the final department inspections remain. They are having a little bit of trouble with the elevator. And so it's kind of slowing down the process a little bit, but they have done an enormous amount of progress. And so we just wanted to show you the progress that's been made on that property. Next slide. A couple updates on the planning side. So Duval Moss, the Moss gets scheduled for their hearing examiner hearing on December 12th, 2025. We've had, quite a bit of online conversation about the Moss. So again, we'll be asking for the police department who said that they will come just to provide that extra layer of security. The applicant has also asked that we make sure that we heighten our security presence at our hearing examiner hearing that day. So the process for that, which is per code, is 10 days prior to the hearing on December 2nd, we'll give notice to the community. So notice of the hearing is posted on the bulletin board at City Hall, and inside KCLS, they have 2 bulletin boards there. That notice will specify to the community how they can go about providing comment for the hearing examiner hearing and how they can participate. The hearing packet, which has the community comments that we've received through SEPA and other comments, hearing examiner or planning commission questions, as well as the staff report, will be physically available to inspect at City Hall beginning on December 2nd. And then it's also online on our website on the planning department landing page. And then finally, as things stand right now, we look like we're going to conclude council business on December 2nd, so not needing a December 16 meeting. However, we might have one single agenda item left that won't make the December 2nd meeting. And unfortunately, it must go in December or they lose vesting, which is the Baton Creek final plat. So we're looking at probably having a special council meeting online to just pass a single agenda item for that one thing. If we could push out to the next year, we would, but like I said, they will lose vesting if we don't get in front of everyone by the end of the year. And that's the updates I have on the building and planning side.
Any questions or comments for City Administrator McNabb? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on.
All right, we'll move on to a couple updates from our finance and clerk's office.
Hi, good evening, Beth McMahon, Finance Director. So yeah, November is benefits open enrollment. Previously, the city has gone through this process on a manual paper form. So this is the first year that we are really utilizing our UKG system, developing out all the new functionality. So we have an electronic process that allows staff to securely log into the system to make their benefit enrollment confirmations or changes. It allows my staff to be able to create a workflow for review and approval and then transmit that information to AWC in an electronic file process that's been developed. So super excited in developing out additional functionality in UKG.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, John Butler, City Clerk. I should note it was very easy to use, so it was very well done. We are starting a food drive. Well, we started it yesterday and it's going to go until December 18. We partner up with Hopeling and there is going to be a toy drive for Acres of Diamonds from November 17 to December 10th. We will share more information shortly. We have what is it called? A flyer. We already have a flyer that we're more than happy to share by email. It has been shared with staff already, and we'll have one for the toy drive next. But essentially for the food drive, these are the items that are that would be encouraged to donate. So please help us make someone's holiday a little brighter. Oh, and please.
And the other flyer for the Acres of Diamonds, I've included QR codes to their Amazon kind of wished items. So to make it easy for anybody.
Thank you. Questions for Beth or the clerk about anything they shared? That's tiny, so I'll be reading. Okay. So a few updates for me. So we were selected for an Evans School Master's Student Consulting Lab project. And it is to assist with community outreach for a potential municipal campus. But they really liked our idea. I put in kind of, because I'm now connected to the Evans School. Our project is titled City of Duval Building What Matters, Evaluating Municipal Civic Campus Features to Prioritize Amenities that Build Community Cohesion. So once this set of Evans School students, I believe I'm meeting with them next week to kind of launch. They'll start doing some community outreach and just talking to the community about what a civic campus is, what are the things that this community might want if we were to do a civic campus, and also just kind of fundamentally what, from a study research perspective, what amenities do you put on a municipal civic campus that aren't just functional like a police department or a city hall, but what are the things that really build cohesion in a community in terms of community assets? So that's the focus of their project. But we're really excited. So we get to be research candidate for a set of Evans School students. I want to thank the Duval Days Organizing Committee for working to incorporate city feedback into next year's planning. They've done a ton of work already in kind of taking our feedback and going kind of not back to the drawing board, but really thinking about what our staff, what our council members who participated in that workshop had to say about the future of Duval Days. So they've already worked on opportunities to do a 3-on-3 basketball tournament, to do a pie eating competition, to do a Duval Battle of the Bands, kind of getting back to those elements of Duval Days that bring community together and are not just shopping at vendors, but really engagement activities. So big thank you to them for doing that work. Interviews are happening over the next few weeks for the Planning Commission and the Cultural Commission vacancies. So we had 2 applications for Cultural Commission already. We've already done those interviews. As a reminder, the Cultural Commission can have between 7 and 9 cultural commissioners. So as long as they're qualified under the rules, more the merrier for Cultural Commission and people that are really excited about participating with the Cultural Commission. And then we have 5 applications for Planning Commission that we'll start reviewing. And then finally, I just want to bring you to council's attention. We've had an influx of public records requests that have required significant city resources to be expended to fulfill, including city attorney time on an hourly basis. Things like asking for city staff sick leave records. Those are not standard requests. They have to go through city attorney review. We've just had a lot. And so when you think about public records requests, yes, we have a clerk, we have a deputy clerk. Part of their job scope is to do public records requests. But public records requests, some of the responses have required external work that is not part of our salaries. So every time we have to send to the city attorney, we get a bill for that. And I value Oscar, I value our city attorney, but it isn't as though that's the cheapest bill that I review every week. So we are incurring more costs on a city attorney basis than we normally do for some of these public records requests. Also, as a reminder, we adopted a public records policy that details the staffing and priority and prioritization of public records requests per policy, and that's also coming from a resolution from a few years ago. The deputy and the city clerk can only spend 15% of their total time on responding to public records requests. They have other important work to do. That also includes redaction. Redaction by policy is included in that 15%. Some of the public records requests that we've gotten, for instance, for bank statements, they will have, identifying financial information. All of those have to be hand redacted. So patience, but also just wanted council to know it's been unusually heavy in the last month or two. And so we're going to work as diligently as we can through the request, but we are also going to follow policy to make sure that those requests get prioritized per policy and that the work that's being done is also by policy. Last bit, per Washington State case law, we do not create records that don't exist as a response to public records requests. So some of them are asking for voting records, for instance. We do not collect and create a separate document for all of your voting records by council member issue. So we are not going to create a record to respond to a public records request. Our obligation is to give the records that are in existence at the time of the request. It would be way too much work to then create a record to respond to a public records request. And then last point, and then this recent case law discussed with our city attorney, if the information is easily publicly available on our website or online, we are allowed to just point out or point requesters to where that information lives, not to reprocess information that exists. So I want a copy of every council meeting for the last 5 years. You just go online and you can look for all the council meetings for the last 5 years. So we're not going to reprocess information that's readily available online. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
I do want to make a note too that those redactions require explanation of every single redaction and exemption. So beyond just blacking it out and making sure that public cannot access personally identifying information or bank account numbers, etc., the clerk has to identify every single line that has to be redacted and have a log that goes along with that to meet the standard of the law. And missing that could actually get the city in legal trouble. So it's very, very, very time intensive and expensive to respond to some of the requests that have come. So just wanted to point that out as well, that this is actually a really big deal for our city, especially since it seems to be just a few folks that are filing multiple requests again and again and again, which we've dealt with that in the past. However, that requester is mostly gone away and was banned by all courts from filing lawsuits against the city because of the litigious and capricious nature of that person's actions. This will not rise to that, but when you have both people doing it, it has a very similar effect.
I would also like to make sure it's clear that the city clerk's office does not, we're not the only ones that do public record requests, or they'll have to go through the police department. A lot of those are very expensive also. Each hour of video requires a certain amount of viewing to make sure we look for anything that has to be redacted, like computer screens and license plates and juveniles, anything else like that, medical type situations have to be redacted. And so you can imagine the amount of hours that we have just on video camera that has to be redacted, as well as case reports. It's a very demanding task and does take quite a bit of time. But for the most part, we usually get a simple request and I have a copy of the case. It's very easy to do, but we're seeing more of those any and all type requests of information, which can be very demanding. A lot of conversations back and forth with the requester to make sure we do everything correctly, but we do our best, but it is very time consuming.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Yeah, I happened to review a number of the recent public records requests today. And as you say, many of them are about the same individuals. And my impression is some of them are very frivolous. Some of them are targeted at eating up staff time. And many of them are politically motivated. So if this gets worse or gets out of hand, I suggest staff bring it to council. Council can consider making, percent of staff time, however, more stringent if need be.
I don't think you can actually make this policy more stringent.
Okay, but perhaps we can do other things that would limit the amount of time and energy we spend on this. But council, at the very least, council needs to be aware of this.
And I think one of the challenges is that, we, and I believe very, very strongly in the transparency side and providing public records that are asked for. And it was a long-term goal of mine this last 8 years to get all of our public records requests listed online so that any request that comes into the city could also be accessed, that information be accessed by any member of the public after it's done. But I think another one of the challenges we have is that people are using pseudonyms and aren't using their real contact information, it appears. We've gathered that a few of those, it's common you try and find out, like, who is this person in the community or not. And there have been definitely names that just don't seem to exist. And so when those requests come in without contact information, it also makes it more difficult for public records responders to respond, because if all you have is an email with a name that doesn't match up to anybody, when there are questions or clarifications that need to happen, that also slows down the process and costs more time.
You have to respond to somebody.
Absolutely,
Really?
we do. Yep, it is the law. And so I deal with it at my day job as well, is that you will have anonymous requesters, and it doesn't matter who they are, you have to respond. It is the letter of the law. Yep.
Yeah, and I just wanted to bring it to council's attention, like anything that's a huge spike in workload. Yeah, I want to bring to your attention, but it isn't just the workload. It's also having to, I mean, I want to say last Thursday and Friday, I probably wrote 3 or 4 emails to Oscar, like, what about this? What about this? And all of that takes his attention and time too. So it is unusual right now. And I just wanted to call your attention to it.
Yeah, and I do want to add one more thing too, is that this oftentimes these requests will involve people that are not council members or employees of the city. And so their information then becomes public as well. And so there's also, depending not on the current requests, but if they continue and if they grow to expand to more private individuals in the community, that could trigger an appropriate thing, a third-party notification to some of these individuals, so that they can go and pay for their own attorneys to try and get their personal information from not being disclosed by the city. Which that's pretty serious for a lot of folks, especially people that are not involved in government, other than as citizens.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing everything we can, but you know, we have to disclose things like our sick leave records. So if you wanted to see every sick leave that I took in the last 3 years, you could theoretically get it. I do want to point out the harm to morale and kind of staff privacy too. Whether we have to give it is a slightly different question of whether those requests have harm to the staff who are the subject of the request.
So any suggestions you have where the council can help, please bring it to us.
Thank you.
With that, I will conclude my report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have 2 presentations this evening. So our first one is an update from the Monroe Sky Valley YMCA with Julie Holmes, the school-age child care director, and Anthony Schmidt, executive director. Actually, I think that might be different.
He's not here this evening, so.
Please approach podium and introduce yourself. Thank you.
So I am Julie Holmes. I am Senior Program Director of Youth Development at the Monroe Sky Valley YMCA. So overseeing childcare, camp, teens, and sports. So my categories grew a little bit since I was here last year. And we want to thank you guys again for allowing us to partner with City of Duval to offer an outdoor day camp here this summer. And we had a great summer. We're going to run through some slides and then talk about the possibilities for next year as well. And the next slide, please. So in winter 2022, Monroe Sky Valley AY began offering basketball to the Duval community. And now Duval has participants in the Monroe Sky Valley's YMCA spring and winter basketball, flag football in the spring and fall. I failed to add volleyball, which is also in the spring and fall. Duval-based teams get to play here in Duval. They practice in Duval. They do have to travel across Snohomish County for games and tournaments and things like that, but they get to practice with their neighbors, practice with their teammates that live here in the Duval area, and most of the coaches are also in the Duval area. Spring 2024, we were asked if we were interested in running an outdoor day camp here. And with the support of the city and the YA of Snohomish County, we began to plan. Summer 2024, we sold about 75 weeks or so. Last year, this past summer, we had 152 weeks, I think. So half the campers were from the Duval, Carnation, Woodinville area, and the rest were from Monroe and Snohomish. Slide, please. So why camp? Camp changes lives. We offer camp programs to make our children better people, create future leaders. And when they have that camp experience, it can change the direction of their lives and create hope for their future. Youth who play outside, happier, better at paying attention, less anxious. Spending time in nature builds confidence. And in nature, there can be less structure than most types of indoor play, allowing them chances to how they want to interact with nature around them, gives them practice managing their own actions, encourages creativity and imagination. We found so many cool bugs, snakes, various things that they would, when I would come to camp, they would be like, show her the picture. They would show me these bugs, and they had done a camouflage activity, and it was the black and white striped bug, and she was like, it was a little 6-year-old. I think it belongs on a zebra. So it was black and white striped. So I was like, all right, you paid attention to the camouflage. Good job. Next screen, please. So our programs are all for camp goals, are relationships, achievement, and belonging. We want to create a stronger community by strengthening families and building relationships, a sense of community and belonging, critical thinking, providing new experiences, and gaining confidence. We added kayaks this summer. So little Luna is on one of our kid kayaks that we had. She was petrified the first time she got in the kayak, but by the end of the summer, it's hard to get her out the kayak. In the middle picture, and I think I have it later in the slide deck too, in our camp programs, we try to focus on the YMCA core values of caring, respect, honesty, and responsibility. And the kids and the counselors all summer long would watch for kids who were showing those. And then at the end of the day, they could nominate a kid to get one of those ribbons. And they would tie it on, they would get one copy to take home, and then they would tie it on a rope that I actually still have in my office that'll come back here next summer as well, so they can continue to add. And then also archery is also a big bone for them as well. Next slide, please. So some of the quotes we had from some of our families: "You've done a nice job empowering my child in her abilities and pushing her to discover more strengths than she knew she had. This year at camp has created so many special memories for my camper. Every day had something fun and exciting to share with us. The activities, the care, the connections that each staff member is taking the time to create with the kids is outstanding. We couldn't be happier." And then, as always, my son loves Y Camp. From the themes to the staff to the new friends he meets, it's an all-around great experience. He's happy and I'm happy. Love the staff and know they genuinely care about the kids as well. Next. So we also do want to say thank you again for the Human Services Grant. It allowed us to offer care for 3 Acres of Diamond children. It provided a safe and fun environment so that the moms could attend job training and go to work. A staff member did share that transportation is a significant barrier for some of their moms, so having a camp within walking distance allowed them to access the childcare without the stress of arranging rides. And then they also shared about how our staff went above and beyond by working closely with their moms and children to ensure a smooth adjustment into the new environment. So just some more fun pictures, kayaks. We were downstairs this summer in the Rose Room, so doing their morning songs, and they love the river mud. Love the river mud. The shirts will never fully recover, but a lot of outdoor education, a lot of observing the nature. They did a lot of walks through the woods and on the path. And yeah, the kayaks as well. Next screen, please. So it could summer 2026 spring. One thing we discovered this past summer was the earlier marketing led to more campers and for Duval families to plan their summer. So the plan is to continue that. This past summer, we offered 9 weeks, ending in that second to last week of summer, and had a lot of requests for that last week of August. So this summer we will be running that full last week of August, which will take us almost to the start of the Riverview School District schedule. So families who need care that last week of August will have an option here in Duval. We did have some staff that we're Duval residents and we want to be able to continue that next summer. And expand some river use, let them kayak a little farther down the river. And then we're also bringing our teen camp or our middle school camp here to Duval to run with our outdoor day camp. So giving an option also if there are Duval 6th, 7th, and 8th graders that are looking for something local to be able to do as well. And then continuing to strengthen our outdoor education effort. No, thank you. Any questions?
I just want to say thank you for being a partner with the city in this. I know as we've been able to expand our staffing at the city, opportunities like this are more feasible with having the assistants to work with you. And I've heard a lot of great feedback about this program. I'm really excited to see where it goes now that we have the appropriate number of folks at the city to help see that move forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, next we have a public safety grant application presentation by Chief Keller.
Thank you. So as many of you have seen prior presentations they've had on public safety grants and as well as the public safety sales tax increase. I'm going to give a little bit of an overview, a little reminder of where we got to today. Public safety has always been high on community's list. It's always high on our legislature in the aspect that they believe that it's been kind of proven that public safety is a little underfunded in certain areas. And some of those are areas where communities can't afford to have fully staffed law enforcement agencies. So in an effort to try to make some of that available, House Bill 2015 was passed in the last legislative session that talks about public safety grants, and it says they're CJTC grants. The grants and the tax are managed by the Criminal Justice Training Commission. So, next. So it's just a little bit of a reminder of the overview. The grant program amounted to $100 million grant pool administered by the Criminal Justice Training Commission, 3 years in length, which expires in June 30th, 2028. So there are some things that it can be used for: hiring new officers and co-responders, for recruiting, hiring, retaining. Lateral hires are prohibited. So it's very clear that any funding for new officers has to be for brand new officers, nobody with prior experience, nobody from another agency. We can't steal a police officer from another agency. And we have to go through the entire process to hire somebody, bring them on. The grant may also be used for broader law enforcement network safety efforts. Some of those talked about are such things such as co-responders, as we go forward that pertain to our agency. And it says though the grants can cover up to 75% of salary plus benefits for up to 3 years, with a maximum amount of $125,000 per position. City and counties must receive funding from existing sales tax, and we're appreciative that council pushed that issue forward, and we're moving forward with that process. But there are certain other requirements, such as complying with new policies, agency leader qualifications. We'll talk about that a little bit. But implementing trainings and data reporting in alignment with the training commission's capacity. Co-responder or co-response priority. So in order to apply for this grant and go to the top of the list, they will look at funding grant applications that start co-responders community immersion for law enforcement program. Presently, we do not have a co-responder program, but we do have resources that we can call on, be available to work through this process and to give assistance as needed. It's not a co-responder type program. We did have one time a co-responder associated with Redmond Police Department, but that funding was lost. And now we just use them on a case-to-case basis, depending on who's available. We usually find a mental health professional. So second priority goes to agencies with existing co-response programs and applications for all other agencies that don't have any of those type of requests or organization priorities are the third tier of that process. Next, please. So the requirements for the grant as well as the sales tax are very similar in nature. In order for us to apply for the sales tax, we have to have certain levels of training. We have to meet certain priorities on and a language in our policies and procedures that relate to Keep Washington Working Act, as well as use of force or application of force principles, as well as those relating to managing protection orders or the retention of firearms from domestic violence situation. All those policies have the Training Commission came up with very specific language that they want to have in our policies. It takes a little change in some of the things we do. It doesn't mean that we do things differently. It just means that they want a specific definition of some type of language in that policy or procedure. And so that's one of the things that has to take place for not only the sales tax, but also if we want to move forward with any type of grant. As you can see, it also says court order firearm language. That's what I talked about in the aspect of DVs. There are oftentimes that we get an order to bring the weapons from the court that we have to go and make a contact with somebody that's been involved in a situation that may be a risk to others or perceived risk to the community that we have to obtain those weapons from and make sure it's secure. There's also things in there regarding gender-based violence training. We have a certain level of training that is required by the Training Commission that we must comply with. All those are required for, let alone for any type of sales tax, which we have approved, but also goes towards any type of grant down the road that we apply for. And then it talks about public safety sales tax again, but there are leadership requirements that a police chief, a marshal, or a certified, who is certified by the Training Commission, and I have to have a law enforcement officer certification, just like anybody else that works on the street. But no felony conviction, no misdemeanor conviction for moral turpitude, dishonesty, fraud, or corruption. That kind of goes unspoken, but I think that there are certain jurisdictions out there that, and we're talking more like elected positions, such as sheriffs, that have some leeway in the aspect of who gets elected, right? Is that person really going to be required be certified by the Training Commission? And volunteer requirements such as having policies for agency volunteers, restrictions on what they can wear, where they can volunteer at, carrying of weapons by that person, as well as there are certain agencies that have volunteers that run search dogs. There's a difference between a search dog and a patrol dog. And so there are certain requirements for using dogs for search and rescue purposes only, versus using them for other type of evidence collection and so on. And then staffing plans, those that apply for the grant have to have a staffing plan that shows where we plan on using our co-response teams or our personnel that are approved for the grant. Anything regarding any type of special commissions we have. There's also a requirement for us to have information regarding any officers that may be on a flexible schedule. Flexible schedule will mean somebody that works less than full time in a commission position for a number of different reasons. But some agencies look at that in the aspect that you have somebody that comes on board and they go, I really want to remain a police officer, but I have these things going on in my life. Instead of working 40 hours or 50 hours a week, I want to work 30 hours a week. And is that something that is viable for an agency our size, or is that something that's viable for a larger agency? One of those things to take into consideration that aspect. And then 911 case enclosure rates, as well as response times and case closures that we have. Those are some requirements for the grant. Next, please. So my presentation here is to talk about what our ask is going to be, to get some information from you and some input as to where we move forward. But if we don't ask, they can't say no, right? So going through that process. And I think it's important for us to reevaluate where we've been in the past. The loss of a co-responder has been critical for us. We have the ability to find the personnel to come out and respond to the calls that are in progress. But having somebody that can be there as a co-responder to develop treatment plans or operational plans for individuals that are in crisis within our community is highly important. Oftentimes the follow-up is where some of that work needs to be done. A co-responder fits that role. Do we have the need or desire to have a full-time MHP or a co-responder? Presently, our caseload doesn't dictate that need. Sometimes it's when you get involved in things, you find out you can use them for more, but as our interpretation based on what our calls for service have been, probably 15 to 20 hours weekly is where we want to kind of land if we have a co-responder that is a part-time worker for our contract for our city. But we also have the ability to maybe partner with other neighboring agencies that already have an existing program to utilize some of that and put some of that, as well as to look at whether there's going to be a call-based type service that we look for in contracting. As it says right there, the assets aspect of having a co-responder goes, partly partnering with neighboring agencies. The Quality has had a co-responder in the past. There have been other agencies out in the valleys that Semi-Amish has co-responders through King County. Redmond has just stood up their co-responder and their MHP with them. Some of the things that they help us out with is assisting officers with wellness. Our officers also need to have some of that contact when there's times when they go to different types of scenarios out there. Their wellness is highly important. I've seen more than my share of police officers impacted by calls for service that have long-term situations that impact their family, impact their wellness, as well as going through that process. But as I said right there, developing long-term treatment plans for those in need. The follow-up is highly important. Having somebody that can actually follow somebody that's been in crisis or we've had dealt with in a non-badge carrying type role, I think is highly important. And we've found where I come from in Bothell, we have co-responders, and it's been a very successful program over there where it has helped out and probably taken some of that burden off of law enforcement, because we're the first ones to call when somebody's in crisis, and having somebody that can deal with things that aren't criminal in nature, that are something that you dealt with by somebody other than somebody wearing a badge and a gun, I think is highly important to have success. Our ask is also going to be for 4 entry-level officers. The ask is to meet some of those needs that we currently have on the agency. It's very clear to me that our agency is understaffed, and some of those things are shown by some of the things I'll talk about on here. But our agency has not had any growth since, I believe, 2018, and that's when we started our SRO position, and that's through funding through a levy position, but there have been no growth. Well, the city has grown in size. And that is shown in some of the data that we've received regarding our response times, our calls for service as we go forward. So having the 4 entry-level officers added to our process will allow for increased officer presence. Presently, we have minimal staffing of 1 officer per shift. We are fortunate enough to have on our night shift to have 2 officers present on nights, but our days right now is down to 1, and that's our minimal staffing. Our part of that is also supplemented by staffing me, my lieutenant, our sergeants filling some of those staffing times where there needs to be that second officer with the second responding officer for that. But as you can see, when I talk about some of the other things on here, having 1 officer for a city of our size impacts a number of different things as regarding to responding our ability to handle the calls for service. So again, it says move the staffing minimum from 1 to 2, increase officer safety. Officers respond to calls or maybe even delay response to calls because the majority of our calls are becoming more of a two-person call versus a one-person call. We are very, the makeup of the city is very domestic. High residential population, the majority of our calls are whether disturbance related type calls, domestic type calls that we go to. And when we start talking about having to separate parties or we have to take somebody into custody, it's a really high risk when you start dealing with individuals that are taken into custody when they're a solo officer. We train people to do that, but it becomes very unpredictable. People somehow go in jail or going through that process. And so when I talk about increasing officer safety, increasing minimal staffing, when officers respond to those type of calls, and they're the only officer on, we have to wait for an available resource, whether it's another responding agency that comes out to assist us on that call. Because King County and response time is probably 15, 20 minutes. It could be Redmond, it could be State Patrol, it could be somebody from Monroe coming down. And we're kind of an island type community where we don't have a neighboring agency that can just be there and just a snap of the wrist and that's everything that taken care of. The additional entry-level officers will be used to diversify some of our skills. One of our primary calls for service is traffic related type situations. I'm not talking about creating a traffic unit, but having that extra person on board allows us to create a traffic specialist type position where a higher level of traffic related training can be given to a certain officer in every squad to allow them to be better prepared to handle and develop long-term planning strategies for some of these traffic concerns that we have. It also allows our officers to have more flexibility working towards developing some of those specific investigative skills, not to become a detective, but skills that a baseline first responder needs to know. That first responder does respond to a lot of incidents that we can handle on our own, but we need to have a higher level of expertise and training. Sometimes we can't afford that training because of our staffing time and our workload doesn't allow that to happen, as well as there's an increase in overtime. If we have to send somebody out who are in minimal staffing, we have to backfill that position somehow. And sometimes that training isn't always available. Some you have to strike when that training becomes available. So we go through that process. Decreased response times. The review of our response times for the last 4 years, we've had an increase in response times for our officers to all levels of calls they go to. The concern that we always have is the high priority, the life and death situations, the potential where somebody's going to get hurt or there's a danger or risk to the community. That level of response time has gone up 31% in the last 4 years. Now, let me also make sure it's clear that I'm not talking a drastic amount because of an agency our size. Our response times are usually pretty low because of the size of the city, because of the type of calls we have. But when you have 31% increase in calls for service or your response times for your priority calls, that's pretty drastic for a city where it's from. And there are a number of things that bring that. Officer staffing is one. If you have officers already on a previous call, it takes time to then clear that call and respond to it. If you only have a limited number of officers available, it is a high risk call. Our officers are going to use some distance to allow for their responding back up to get there. There is also a change in the community. Traffic is heavier. Responding from one portion of the city to the other, it takes a little bit extra time as you get to that stage. So all those things contribute to our increased response time. And we also have more complex calls for service now. And so our response times have gone up. Overall, our overall response time, which include those that are high priority, it averages out to about 11% increase. But I really get concerned when I see the jump in those high risk type calls that we go to where somebody is at risk or the potential is that somebody is at risk. I get concerned about that aspect. For a larger agency, I'll give you a prime example. Redmond has a larger area to cover. They still have more officers than we do, but their threshold for priority one calls is bigger than ours. Just because they have more personnel that can flow in that direction. So when they get there, they usually have better resources to deal with it. Us, we like to get there as soon as we can to deal with some of those issues. What I have on there is increased officers, 1,000 per thousand, right? So presently, our current staffing puts us at 1.33 per thousand. That is a standard that is always talked about. Doesn't necessarily mean that having the national average of 2.33 per thousand is ideal for your agency. And I don't believe that is an ideal number for an agency, but I know that 1.33 is at the low end of the spectrum because we do get reports that outline agencies of our size, cities of population of 5,000 to 15,000 and their officer per thousand ratio. When you look statewide, all the agencies that fit into that category, there are only 2 agencies that have less staffing than we do. That's Enumclaw and Blackburn. And a lot of those have to do with funding. A lot of those have to do with the demographics of the area, but 1.33 is very low. If you look at state average, I don't like to consider the national average because there's a lot of cities on the East Coast that are high population that also fund their police officers in a different manner than out here. So increasing, and if we were to get these 4 bodies, would increase our staffing from 1.33 to 1.77, which meets not only our current, but also our near future desires regarding population increases. There will be a population growth for our city. It allows us to have some of those things. And then reduce overtime. Some of our overtime right now is utilized to help fund staffing for some of those training needs that we have, as well as to meet some of our minimal staffing. People get time off, they get vacation, they have an injury, they have certain things that take them away. They become parents, right? Different things like that. We have to grant some of that time off for them to make it happen and get them to repair. And our overtime is relatively high right now. And to a point where I don't like it where it is, but I also know that right now we're down a few officers, so some of that salaries and overtime is going to be recouped by some of that salary savings that we have. But our officers can't continue on like this forever. When they are working that overtime, it's tough. And they know that that's part of the job when they come into it, but it does impact their wellness as you move forward. Next, please. So what happens next? There's an application submittal process. The application process is slotted to open in December. The application process hasn't been fully formalized. It is a process that will be managed by the Criminal Justice Training Commission again. And I would assume that they're going to have some stipulations regarding how they want to see the data collected and presented to them to make sure that it meets the criteria that they're required to uphold. Tentative approval, once the grants are submitted, they have told us 25 to 60 days. I think it'll be a little bit longer. They may grant full acceptance of the request, or they may grant partial. There are presently 270 police agencies in our state, and not all of them will be going forward with the grant, but I know that some of them are relatively large. King County is a prime example. King County Sheriff is going to try to work through the grant process. They have 9 openings right now. Seattle's going to be another one that's going to ask for some of those things down the road. And so when you start talking about 270 agencies, maybe 200, maybe 150 are going to start applying for this grant. And you only have 100 million, which goes over 3 years. They're going to have to make some choices of whether they grant full applications or partial. And then once that tentative approval takes place, then comes our work where we have to sit there and talk about Could we accept the full or partial? Are the funds will be accepted for 3 years of funding? We have to evaluate, is the funding sustainable, right? Because it is a partial grant, it's not a full grant for those positions. There would be some type of conversation we would have to have regarding budget, whether those things would be there. But that is probably a plus thing to have come to our level. Getting to the point of having them accept our grant application is the first step. Whether we choose to agree to accepting the full grant that's given to us is something that we would have to have a discussion regarding budget and how those things are. And then budget adjustments, even if we were to grant those positions all coming on board, there are limited equipment purchases that have to take place, right? Can't just have a gun that they check on the walk every day. People have to have firearms, people have to have ballistic vest, they have to have equipment. There are certain trainings that we have to go through that. There's also the partial salary compensation that we'd have to work through finance to make sure we have a good estimate of exactly the impact of accepting these grants. It is a long process, but it is something that I want to at least give it a shot for to see what the outcome might be. It may be that we apply for these grants and get nothing. Or we get partial, maybe we get the co-responder portion, maybe we get 1 or 2 officers out of this process. And then we evaluate whether we can sustain that type of position to accept that grant. So I'm bringing that forward to you to kind of make sure you're aware of the process of where we want to go forward and go through this. We haven't accepted any grant, we haven't gotten to that stage. It is still a long process to get from this point to the end result. And I'm willing to take the stab at it to see what the answer might be. It may be nothing, it may be congratulations, right? And then we have to talk about how we integrate that and work that through. So, next question.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Yeah, one of the things I think we'll be worried about from a financial standpoint is sustainability. As you say, the grant is 3 years. Is that?
It is 3 years.
Yeah. So what happens after 3 years for that? And I know you don't have answers to that, so I'm not expecting those. But certainly that's something we have to consider. For example, we get a full grant, we hire 4 additional officers and a mental health professional. That would be wonderful. And as and I can't see going back. So 3 years from now, we don't have the grant. We're going to have to absorb that costs otherwise.
Yeah, a lot of things happen in 3 years, and there are a number of different possibilities. I'm sure that funding for law enforcement will always be a topic for the legislature. Whether they choose to renew grants, whether they choose to establish more funding, that may be difficult based on the financial status of the state right now. But this was a very strong push by the governor to make sure they go through this process to have this available. Some of the positions I would anticipate would probably allow for some attrition. We will have officers that will leave our agency during this period. Some of that may be part towards that. But if nothing was to take place, there is the assumption of the salaries for those individuals and that funding. So having that 3-year period allows for us to have some different discussions about financial stability, not just for the police department, but for the city as a whole, to go through, and gives us a little bit of a buffer to make sure we work through that process to find sustainability, as you say. So it would be a deeper discussion, I think, for us to have once the grant is approved or tentatively approved to figure out whether we accept it or not.
Yeah. I was hearing you talk about the undirected patrol time and then your response time and just some concerns around there. One thing that you also said, and I'm just trying to understand how they interplay, is we're down staffed right now. And we've also had a significant amount of staff who's been in training, so can't work independently or even away at training or waiting to go to training. So I would imagine part of that response time and undirected time perhaps is related to some of those other things, how likely is it that we could reach a level of stabilization to where we wouldn't be continuously having vacancies and like in training staff?
I can tell you that a lot of stabilization depends on culture. Law enforcement officers will go where the culture is appropriate and where good. I can tell you that since I've been here, we've had people leave for other reasons other than and that always happens. There are larger agencies that have different opportunities. We have an officer that leaves to go to work for the city of Marysville that want to have some different opportunities, different experience down the road. And he also lives up in that area. So there are certain things that are there. We have had people leave that probably wouldn't have fit well for the agency. And that's not saying they're not a good officer, but the culture needed to change. And I can tell you that the officers that I've hired since I've been there, or the officers that are there now, want to be there forever. They like the culture, they like the aspect of the support from council, they like the aspect of looking at the future as bright. You know, we're talking about a new campus facility, going through that process. All those things are things that help in retention. If they don't have hope that things are going to get better or that the agency is going to progress, they will find an agency out there where they believe that is there. And so when we talk about all the things that have happened and discussions we've had lately, whether it's been the implementation of the sales tax, all those go towards in a strange way retention, because officers want to know their future is bright. And they don't want to go to an agency that's dying or sick. And our agency has been there for a long time. And it's not that I'm a miracle worker, but sometimes it takes an outside person to come in and look at the agency and see what needs to change. And I can tell you that culture is one of those things that really had to change. In the agency, I'm proud that our personnel have absorbed that culture and buy into it and work through that process. But I can tell you that I do hire some young people. And if they don't see their future here, there will come a time within 3 to 5 years that they will say, I'm going to go elsewhere. Because I want to have some of that ability to do that as an option. But they love the community. That's one of the reasons why they're here. Because that's kind of my easy buy for getting them to come to the door, is they like the aspect of the community. It's kind of a resort town feel, right? They have a lot of community events during the summer, and those things happen. As well as when you drive down the street, people wave at you. You can pull up on the side of the road and there's some kids playing basketball, you go shoot some hoops with them. Kind of develop those connections you go through, and the people that are here are because of that culture, because of the environment we work in. I can't guarantee you what it'll be like when I leave, but I can tell you that I'm going to try to read a culture that we're being from and go through that process. So I would hope that everybody would stay, but I also have to be kind of a realist that there may be some people that leave every time. And we're not always successful in the people we hire. We try to do our best to hire for moral standing and hire for their personal culture to make sure it matches ours. But there are some people that want to be police officers who just don't need it. Or there are people that become police officers that early in their career, they find out that, you know what, Ollie isn't my type of thing. And they decide to move on for whatever reason. And good for them if that's where they need to realize that. I kind of hope that maybe they realize that before we spend all the money training them, but it is very important for somebody to be in the business for the right reasons. So I anticipate that probably even if we wouldn't get the 4 grants, we probably would have some shuffling that will occur within the 3-year period. We might even have some of those, for.
I just want to add a little bit onto what Chief said. Chief touched on a little bit, just kind of the staffing models over the years. And police chiefs prior to Chief Keller, this is kind of a cultural thing for the city of Duval, really worked to do everything they could to keep costs down. And the staffing model of the 1.33 has been tried. Multiple chiefs have tried it, and it's not been successful. So it would not be wise to continue down the pathway of wishing and hoping that when you hire and get a full staff that folks are going to stay for the long term. Law enforcement right now is a pretty high turnover occupation for many, many reasons. And I think at this point, it is definitely in the city's best interest to expand the staffing and not rely on overtime. And even having those 4 positions, the real reality is that they're not going to be full all the time. And that there will be vacancies. We have cost savings all over the place when we do have vacancies. And if you have more police officers on staff, just by the nature of having more bodies available, there will be less overtime, even in those periods of lower staffing. So I think this is one of the lessons learned over time and looking at what's going on with other agencies is that it's more important to staff up and to some people's viewpoint appear overstaffed in order to have the appropriate level staffing, as well to Chief's point that we are an island and we don't have the ease of Kirkland officers coming next door, literally across the city line to Redmond to assist or what have you. So it puts us in a more challenging position. And as Chief was talking about, more and more domestic incidences being reported and called in a city, that does significantly increase the risk level to our officers on a daily basis. DV calls are the most dangerous calls an officer can go on. Lots of officers are killed in the line of duty at DV calls, and our community is not immune. We've had murder suicides, we've had significant DV issues that have put our officers at risk. And I actually have been injured as well. And so decreasing that risk is, I think, incumbent upon the city to provide that work environment where those risks are reduced and that people are not burning themselves out on overtime. Overtime also can increase the risk to the officers and the community when folks are working too many hours. That was a big problem when I was a new council member. We had some officers working 40 hours a week overtime, and that was absolutely not safe, and it was consistent. Up to 20 to 40 hours overtime per week. That's on top of their normal shifts. And that was a very dangerous situation. We got rid of that and have made incremental progress. And I think that Chief's experience and research here to bring that forward is what needs to happen at this point as our community grows and changes.
I used to want to add some clarification when I talk about prior culture for the agency. There were times when the culture may have been appropriate for the agency based on what was going on. But when I talk about changing the culture here, I have to look at sustaining the agency, making it functional for the future, and it's good for that process, and not just living in the now. When I got here, because of some of that, looking at it, I'm not going to ask for too much. I'm going to keep things on the low key. I would say that the agency was 10 years behind standards in law enforcement. And it's not that they knew they were behind, if they didn't know any different because of the island mentality, because they were on the island, they didn't see other things. And things when I came here that I asked about, we had implemented in Bothell 10 and 15 years ago, that when I had that question here, they had no clue what that information was. And so our officers have been at a very increased risk because of the lack of some equipment and training that they have. So we're changing that. We're working through it and getting it better. But if you want a professional law enforcement agency, there are some hidden needs that have to be there. And some of those are covered by staffing. Some of those are covered by grant opportunities that work through. And some of this grant is not just for salaries. It can be used for training and those type of things that can be utilized to help develop your co-responders and work through that. But the first thing that has to happen is we have to ask. And then if we are blessed enough to get approval, then I think it's important for us to have a deeper discussion as to how we sustain that position. I don't want to hire people just to wear them off.
Thank you, Chief. Any, Councilmember Olin?
I have two, but obviously I can do one, we can go around, but so one question is, so you have up there 4 officers. And I guess I'm curious, you know, I know that we need 4 brand new officers in order to qualify, you know, for the grant money. Given the seniority of the staff that we have now, the police force that we have now, if you could do anything, would you still want 4 new officers, or really would it be better to have more with the experience, but to fit into that box, it's okay to enter?
Finding law enforcement officers that experience is difficult.
Yeah.
We do accept applications from officers that are wanting to go or leave their agency or that have graduated from the academy. But probably over the last 6 months, I had 2.
Yeah.
One of those is unacceptable. Oftentimes when people leave an agency, there's a reason. And we have to look at what that reason is. Is it because it's not a good fit for them, or is it because they have some bad issue they have with them? One of the things that I talk about regarding culture with our agency right now is they know that we're going to make good choices in hiring people. And when you make those good choices and we're not just trying to fill a hole, they understand that because they know how difficult it can be when you just try to hire somebody and don't hire the right person. It causes chaos within an agency. It causes people to leave. It causes disciplinary. It causes all sorts of things. So bad law enforcement practices. And they want to make sure we hire the right people. So that helps in creating a better culture too. But if I could find good qualified individuals out there that have prior experience, I could use a couple of them right now.
Yeah.
But it does take time, and the pool is not there. When you have Seattle that has the highest salary in the state now, when you have King County that has a signing bonus of $40,000 for a lateral in-state employee and guarantees them that once they graduate from their field training and their probation, they can apply for any position in the county. They can go to detectives, they can go to SWAT, they can go to motors, they can go to traffic, whatever the case is. You're finding a lot of senior people that are good quality people wanting to leave their agency because they can't become a detective in Baldwin. And they decide, if I go to King County and do about 1 year, I can put in for detectives.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that out there that causes that. But it's not just us. Every agency is finding difficult to find those good laterals that want to make a move to their city.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyone else? Oh, you got one more.
I have to.
You didn't ask the second one.
So my other question was, I saw the priority on there for the co-response. And I guess what I'm wondering is, I mean, I understand our need really is a part-time at this point. I love the idea of having that back, you know. Is that enough? Is a part-time co-responder enough to push us into that top tier that is likely to win the grant?
I believe so. They haven't said anything very specific, but
Yeah.
those that do not have a co-responder type program, go to the top.
Automatically next year, yes, sir.
Go to the top. And we don't presently have that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'd love to add that. Great.
I would do. Right.
Seeing no further questions. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Chief. Great presentation. And now we will move on to our public hearing for the 25-26 mid-biennium review and budget adjustments. So before I open the public hearing, I will read the rules of the public hearing into the record. In adherence to the regulations outlined for public hearings before the Duval City Council, Chapter 9 of the City Procedures Manual, any individual seeking to address the council during the designated public comment segment must comply with the following procedures. First, sign in on the provided forms specific to the public hearing, and second, thoroughly complete all pertinent sections of the said form. Upon commencement of the hearing, as announced by the chair, typically the mayor, the city clerk will present the chair with the sign-in sheet. Subsequently, the chair will proceed with the agenda for the public hearing. Each speaker will be summoned to the podium in the order listed on the sign-in form, or they must communicate their name and, if relevant, their address, affiliation with any organization or group being represented, and their corresponding role or position within said organization or group. Time limits for speaking engagements are 3 minutes for individuals representing themselves and 5 minutes for those representing a group or organization, unless otherwise determined by a majority vote of the council present. The city clerk will monitor and enforce these time limits, setting a timer for each speaker to ensure adherence. Comments should be pertinent to the subject matter of the public hearing and respectfully addressed to the city council. Personal remarks are deemed inappropriate. Disorderly conduct, including disruptive behaviors such as booing or harassment, will not be tolerated and may result in removal from the premises. Speakers may alternatively submit written statements, which will be added to the official record by the city clerk. Questions posed during the hearing will not be answered immediately, but may be addressed at the chair's discretion following the close of the comment period. Comments of city council and public hearing procedures will be available upon request and distributed to attendees at the outset of each public hearing session conducted by the Duval City Council. And with that, I will open the public hearing on the 25-26 mid-buy review and budget adjustments and leave it to Director McMinn, our finance director, for presentation.
Yeah, we can do the presentation now. Okay. So this is just the slide to go over previous estimated amendments that we have reviewed in prior council meeting. Any questions on budget adjustment?
We won't do questions.
Okay, I will hand it over to city administrator to continue.
Thank you. So we had a process for any council members who wanted to offer a budget amendment. We did not receive any, so we'll move on to one item on the strategic fund that Mayor is raising for our review, as well as a couple of adjustments. And that's really it for the biennium, or for the at least the mid-buy. Of course, as we all know, when we move into next year, we're going to start building our new biennium, probably with community outreach in March, and then really doing the sausage making June and July. So as soon as we say we're almost, done with biennium, we'll start building a new biennium. So pretty short presentation for this mid-buy adjustment. So the first thing on the strategic fund, this is a slide that just is a reminder of the creation of the strategic fund. And then I draw your attention to section 2, or rather section 3, which is authorized use of the strategic fund, which is one-time expenditures as use of strategic fund revenues and fund balance as part of the budget process or other council actions. So that's how the strategic fund was created and what it's used for. Used it for a variety of things, whether it's economic development and tourism grants, which is in the budget for this time, and other one-time projects or studies, things like that. Next slide. So just wanted to give you an update of where we are on the strategic fund. So the current balance of the strategic fund is $1,198,000. I didn't wear my glasses. 884. The prior disbursements into the strategic fund in 2023. So it just keeps building. The strategic fund, every year we take money from new construction, put it in the strategic fund. So in 2023, we moved 296,000. 2024, we moved 417. 2025 as a new construction, is decreasing a bit, 351,000. And our estimate for 2026 is to move 356,570 into the strategic fund. As a reminder, this is money that would normally go into the general fund, but it's kind of siphoned off and put in the strategic fund. So potential approaches for the strategic fund, which is the issue that we want to raise in this biennium. There's kind of 4 options here. One is leave the remainder, 1.1 million. And use as resolution 2114A articulates, which is council initiated one-time expenditures. And then under option 1, you would then discontinue, including for 2026, funding that, and then using the money that would go into the strategic fund back into the general fund. So retain the 1.1 million, start spending it down on any council initiated one-time expenditures, and then in the future, including in 2026, discontinuing funding of the strategic fund. Option number 2, kind of the same thing, leave the remaining money, the 1.1 million, but use it for a specific purpose in support of general fund initiatives like park and police. So, i.e. restrict it, and then you would discontinue it, funding in the future. Option number 3, continue as is. There's nothing wrong with how we're doing it, other than it makes it look like the general fund is more depressed than it actually is, because this is general fund money. It's just put into a different fund. And then finally, move the current balance into the general fund and then pause funding the strategic fund into the future. Next slide. So then we have, as I mentioned, a couple of personnel adjustments, which is normal work both during a mid-biennium as well as the biennium budget. You can go through your different personnel issues, and instead of doing them kind of randomly off cycle, you do them as part of your budget process. So the first one is the community events and communications manager position. So remember back when in 2022 and 2023, we talked about the 3 positions that were funded by ARPA. They were a communications coordinator, a community events coordinator, and the emergency management coordinator. In this biennium, we laid off the communications coordinator, and we retained the community events and the emergency management coordinator. So when we initially put the job specs together back in 2022, the community events coordinator and the communications coordinator were not leveled the same. We had the community events coordinator at a 75 and the communications at an 80, and that was based at the market at the time. So when we lost the communications coordinator, the community events coordinator, Rita, took over almost all of those communication functions. And so she's been doing both jobs for the last year. And it's actually about a year because Jason, our prior communications coordinator, left in November. So with that, she's also taken on additional training and preparation for the full scope of the communications role, including, as you heard from Luke tonight, doing PIO training and preparing herself to be able to do those communication duties. So the proposal here is actually to combine those into a single position. It eliminates an FTE kind of classification of our scheme, which from a fiscal stewardship perspective means that we won't have even the schema for a communications coordinator to refill in the future. It is a single coordinated position, and it kind of reduces the amount of job classifications and FTEs that we have in the city. So that is adjustment number 1. Next slide. Adjustment number 2 is to eliminate the TLT permit technician position. That was approved prior in 2025. I've taken a look and reviewed the pending permits. They're not high now. They're going to be high soon. Again, we get this deluge in December usually. However, I think with the current needs, they could be satisfied with our single permit technician for the foreseeable future, and it was a TLT position. It would have ran 1 more year, but I think as we think about kind of really solidifying the staffing of the community development department, I think it makes sense right now, instead of trying to refill the vacancy, thinking about it differently. With that said, they have a severe backlog. So I work now every Tuesday and Wednesday in the permit center. So I'm able to see more with my visual. Their building permits that need to be scanned and digitized are about this tall. They have over 6,000. that need to be digitized. And so paperwork exists for digitizing records, but I think we can do that through a series of interns with college students that need good job experience. They'll come without benefits load, retirement load, all that kind of. So that is a proposal to eliminate that out of our budget, which then next slide will look like that in the current structure. Next slide. This we talked about the last meeting is the reorganization of the community development department into a community and economic development department, with that being the future structure. Next slide. This is, you have a document in the council packet. This is a locate term limited public works temporary utility locate maintenance tech 1. As the memo and the file notes, we're having a lot of locate requests, so it's good news, right? We're getting fiber in the city and we have 2 fiber providers that are coming in, but man, are they creating a lot of work. So we are doing a lot of locates. It's taking work away from the normal standard work that is programmed in the Public Works Department. And so the request would be for a term limited maintenance tech position to get us through the construction process that we are currently in. It's fully funded through a series of sewer, stormwater, utility funds, and will restore workflow stability to the existing field crew. And then next slide, the final here is we have our second public hearing tonight on existing business, a discussion of this slide deck and anything else budget related. Not asking for a decision tonight, but would like to get through a discussion of some of these items so that our finance director can go back, price these, December 2nd, bring you a fully finalized biennium budget for adoption and approval. And with that, that is the end of the staff presentation for the midnight.
Thank you, City Administrator. And we do not have anyone from the public in the audience. So with that, I will close the public hearing. And we'll move on to existing business, and that is discussion of Agenda Bill 25-52, the 25-26 mid-buy review and budget adjustments. And I just want to make a note that each time we go through this budget process, we make some sort of staffing adjustments. That's part of being flexible and being resilient, as well as being responsible stewards of both our taxpayer dollars and making sure that we are meeting the requirements that we're required to meet by law as best we can, as well as trying to provide the community the services that they want that are outside of what we're required to do. We do this every year as far as make adjustments. So this is routine and normal and expected, and is really part of the long-term resiliency of how we run our budgets in the city of Duval. As far as the strategic fund, this is my thought. And when you look at the needs, particularly in staffing in our police department, the fact that we are increasing parks and expanding massively without a plan for staffing, I think it would be wise to revert that strategic fund back to where it belongs, and that's the general fund. And I would fully support a policy commitment to segregate that money for police and park staffing as appropriate. While it is construction sales tax and it will fluctuate, there are opportunities to fluctuate elsewhere in the budget as well. If you get to a point of needing to cut community events, that can be done. You can cut staff and reduce parks maintenance, etc. But the fact of the matter is that every 2 years and every year in the mid-biennium, all of these things are looked at. I would also note for council that we are doing very, very well. We had a beginning fund balance of $40 million for the beginning of this biennium. We are at $58 million in revenue with estimated expenditures through the end of the biennium of $53 million. We are doing very well, despite a lot of things that we heard out in the community over the last couple of months. We do not have a $2 million deficit. In fact, we are $5 million ahead overall of where we would be at break even. So we are in a strong position. However, we also know that the economic tides are starting to turn. And I think it would be a wise and prudent budget decision to make sure that funds are segregated for staff costs in order to be able to long-term maintain services. If we cannot add these positions that are needed, then that funding can also help support any budget shortfall in the future for a period of time, and hopefully result if the economy does take a downturn, hopefully eliminate the need to reduce positions that are necessary or not do things that the city needs to do. A big part of the city's responsibility is asset management. You can't do proper asset management without proper staffing. That's a big part of parks maintenance work. And we've made a strong commitment to our taxpayers. They've made commitments to us by voting to support funding for our parks. I'm looking towards the long term as the city administrator and our staff is for the long term resiliency and sustainability of our community. There's lots of unknowns. A year ago, we thought we were at the fiscal cliff. We're not there yet. But we also been talking about that for 20 years, or at least since the property tax measure passed at the legislature. So I wanted to throw that out there to start discussion and so that council could hear my viewpoint on that and why I was making those recommendations. So with that, any council feedback? Council member Schaefer.
With the council's agreement, I would like to discuss these budget proposals one at a time. I don't want to confuse them or mush them together because I think they're all very unique and different. Starting with the strategic fund, and I'll throw out my comments with the strategic fund. We, the council, put the strategic fund in place for a very specific reason. We wanted to segregate the money we're getting from growth into its own fund so the city does not constantly rely on growth. That'd be a very bad position for us to get into. As you can imagine, with your own personal finances, if you have a one-time inheritance, say you get $100,000, do you want to just spend $100,000 additional for the rest of your life? Well, you can't. You just can't. So it's good fiscal hygiene, in my opinion, to have a strategic fund from development and keep it segregated from the general fund, primarily for the use of one-time expenditures. Now, we, the council, can change that. It's in our power. But we decide, wow, we really want to use the strategic fund for this ongoing expense, we can do that. But nonetheless, the strategic fund, I believe, serves a very good purpose. I would be very disappointed if we backed away from that. And frankly, I think it would be very irresponsible of us to do so.
Councilmember McHenry.
Thank you. So I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, so correct me if I'm wrong. The 4 options, was one of those options not discharge off some of the excess we've built up, but not discontinue funding into the strategic fund? So in essence, I didn't hear that as an option, and so I just wanted to throw that out as a potential 5th, or I am a little tired and I apologize, so I might have missed it. So if you could just clarify, and then if there's a pro-con perspective from staff on that potential 5th option as well, which would be as we accumulate what we view as too much, we're not using it and it's just sitting there. That's not great either. So direct that money towards something, but not discontinue the funds going into strategic fund.
Yeah, thank you. So that's a good 5th, right? So I identified 4 possible options. A 5th could be leave the 1.1, pause for a little while. Well, I guess I kind of said that, discontinue funding, but you could also, as a 5th or 6th iteration of that, pause for a year or 2 to figure out how you want to spend it down, see if you spend it down, and then re-up it. I mean, you really can take it any way you want, but it is something I think we should identify, and I think it's important to identify that we are sitting on $1.1 million in this fund. I don't know that staff has a strong perspective other than, you know, the importance of a mid-biennium budget as we think about different things is to highlight areas. We don't have programming associated with the strategic fund. And I think that's probably something we should discuss. Doesn't necessarily have to be now, it can be in our next biennium, but I do think holding that money without a purpose or a strategic plan for what to do with it is something that at some point council should tackle.
Yeah, I totally agree. Oh, so can I have my quick follow-up? Is that fine?
Go ahead.
It was just to clarify and reconfirm. My thinking right now would be to get rid of some of the built-up excess, you know, not just leave it sitting in that fund, but continue the way the strategic fund gets funded. So in essence, let's move some of this excess, but keep it going for the immediate future, and then we can evaluate programming, policy, that type of stuff. But it would just get rid of the excess for right now.
Mayor Pro Tem Mercer.
Yeah, excuse me. Actually, that's where I was kind of going because I could tell that Councilmember McHenry's sort of recommendation was sort of not the pause. It was to sort of draw down and then continue funding. The other approach to this, and because I do think there's, you know, much in the same way we look at sort of some of the wastewater and water fees, sort of the rainy day fund. It's a little different, I think, than the traditional reserve, which we're required to retain. This is really more discretionary than some of the reserve, but it was to essentially, as Councilmember Schaefer said, to sort of ease the edges sort of from or smooth out sort of the highs and lows and remove some of the dependencies on incoming revenues. You know, one way to sort of conceptualize this would be, and maybe this is overthinking it, but, you know, there could be a short term if we, for that one-time use where we did identify parks and public safety and we, you know, took 50% of that and we put it into the general fund. That would be it would be a one-time use in the context of how we define it, and then it would continue to fund. The other way is if we considered this to be an ongoing issue, to place some type of statutory cap, either as a percentage or where it would in fact pause or would sort of catch up. So I think there's a couple ways you can do this, but I do think we could essentially execute the core mission of the strategic fund, which would be a one-time use to fund some of these priorities that we find, and yet not discontinuing the methodology we already have in place in terms of the annual funding. So.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Naplan.
Yeah, I thank you for reminding everyone about the reason that the strategic fund was created. It was to make it clear that this was one-time money, it was temporary. There is a baseline of sales tax from construction that stays in the general fund because, you know, there will be variations, but this huge building boom that we're experiencing right now is unusual and short-term. And anyway, thank you for sharing that. But one of the things when it was created is I had seen how other cities handled the one-time money from construction. It was Snoqualmie, the bridge when it got built out, which is now done. And also Woodinville, I believe, was the other example. And what they did with theirs, they didn't have a specific strategic fund, but they just shifted all of that construction sales tax into a capital fund for facilities, because that was in their mind that, from what I gathered, is this is really sort of an impact fee. You know, you built all these homes, they're creating pressure on your city. So use that sales tax to mitigate some of that growth. So the ideas would be if we need a new city hall, Third Avenue, you know, we got a lot more traffic on Third Avenue now that we cut it through with Daybrook. You know, we don't have money for Third Avenue. We don't have money for a city hall. Like, I mean, those projects we keep talking about, and this is the idea that you would use a strategic fund. You would use that impact fee type money, which is the construction sales tax, one-time money, and really invest it in a permanent asset that is related to growth. So growth puts pressure on your city and you mitigate it with something that is lasting, right? Not on a position that then is going to need further funding. If we need a position that needs further funding, then we need to find some ongoing revenue, not just, use this one-time money to get us a little further so that we can just push down, the emergency that we know is going to happen. I just think that that's irresponsible, as you said. I agree. So, if there is a drawdown of this money, I think we really need to contemplate what could we do that is growth related, because this is growth money. So mitigate the impacts of growth. So I'm not going to be here when you all decide, but I really think that we need to continue setting aside the money as an ongoing thing. The concept of the strategic fund, I think is solid and good financial practice. So I hope we do that. And the other thing, if we wanted to draw it down, our contingency fund is not fully funded at the moment. The way it's calculated is 37.5 cents per thousand of assessed value. Our assessed value is a lot higher than when we calculated the contingency fund balance several years ago. And I think that we're about $350,000 short. So that would be another thing. We want to fill in the contingency fund that is kind of fallen behind as our assessed value's grown. I don't know. Those are a couple ideas, but I really don't think that we should use strategic fund, construction sales tax to fund an ongoing position. It's just the exact opposite of the whole point.
So I will make a clarifier before the city administrator talks. That was not what was proposed to fund ongoing positions, just the strategic fund to propose ongoing positions. So to be clear, that's not what was being proposed. So I just want to make that clarification on the record. I also want to make the clarification that building infrastructure requires staff and asset management and more funding to maintain it. Doing projects, capital projects with one-time money does not eliminate the need of staff and operations and maintenance for that capital. And that is missing from this conversation. And that's one of the reasons I brought this forward. City Administrator. No, actually, Councilmember Napton, you've had your 2 follow-ups. And we'll let the City Administrator go.
I haven't had a single follow-up.
You've had your 2 questions. So you asked a question, you had a follow-up.
What?
It's City Administrator's turn.
I haven't asked a question. I just made a statement about strategic fund. I haven't asked one question. I haven't had one follow-up. I'd like a point of order. Does anyone remember me asking a question?
One.
Okay, well, proceed, Councilmember Napton.
Okay. All I wanted to say is the projects I gave as an example were City Hall, new City Hall, which is one thing that we have been told again and again that it would actually reduce our reliance on resources because it would consolidate. The second one is 3rd Avenue. I don't know that that creates ongoing staffing needs. So I just wanted to clarify that the 2 examples I gave of investing in mitigation of growth would not cause increase in ongoing staffing by doing those capital projects. I just thought it's important to clarify that.
City Administrator McNabb.
So I just want to clarify, these are not, they're, to Councilmember Schaefer's point, they're independent questions. I didn't raise the strategic fund to talk about funding a different position. These are kind of independent discretionary things. The other thing is we don't have to do this right now. We can take the time in, we should do it soon though, January through June. Really think about what we are doing with this fund and what our strategy is. Because Finance Director McMinn and I, the reason we brought this up and talking to the mayor is it isn't that it's irresponsible, but it is a fund that sits there and makes it look like our general fund and the overall financial health of the city is more depressed than it is. Yeah. And so I wanted to raise that as part of the discussion now, but passing the biennial budget is not needed. We don't need a decision on this point. We can punt to pass the budget if we want to take more time. But I think as we talk about the biennium, it is important to raise this issue because we don't have a strategy other than one-time expenses. That's not a strategy.
No. Councilmember Olin and then Councilmember Seppel.
So I haven't sat through a budget cycle yet. And so there's a lot that I don't know about this and this money and where it came from and things like that. I don't know if we've ever used any of the money out of the strategic fund and what kinds of things we've used it for. And so I'm just offering, I have a degree of ignorance around this issue. With that said, one of my inclinations is to earmark some of it as emergency reserves. We talked about there's landslides, we're a high risk of landslides, we're a high risk of fires. If those sorts of issues present here in Duval, it's going to take a lot of money to recover from that. And so that to me seems like a prudent use of that money. And I don't know what reserves we have on hand that would satisfy that need now, but putting some of this money into that strategically long-term makes sense to me. I think the community would be fine with us if we're sitting on a bunch of money that's specifically for emergency management. I think that would be pretty acceptable. So that's one of my inclinations with that.
Thank you. I like that. Councilmember Supple.
Yeah, my understanding is that the money from the strategic fund can be spent on the same things that money from the general fund can be spent on.
That's correct.
So if that's the case to me, I don't see why we want to segregate the strategic or separate the strategic fund from this general fund. I mean, it's like, it just complicates things. I like things simple. I like, one fund to cover expenses and keep track of. Now we have a strategic fund that we're trying to argue. We're trying to discuss what we use the money for. We don't have any, to me as a parent, we don't have any idea what that money's to be used for. We haven't spent any of it, it looks like, in the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, to me, it's just, I'm with number 4, move it into the general fund, pause the strategic funding of the strategic fund, because I don't really see any fundamental use for it.
City Administrator McNabb.
So I think what would be helpful for tonight is just to get a sentiment from council on, we raised it. Do you want to wait and have a deeper discussion that is actually kind of about this specifically, how to use it, at a later time when you have all had more time to contemplate it? Because kind of threw it out there to you as a thing to discuss during the biennial budget process, but like I said, we don't have to have a decision about how to spend it in order to pass the budget. And so I think what Director McMinn and I would like for tonight is, do you want to have a deeper dialogue next year when you have a little more time and it's not the second to the last council meeting?
Perfect. Good consensus on that.
Okay, that's number 1. Okay. Number 2 is eliminating the communications coordinator position. Thank you. Out of kind of our FTE schedule and combining it into a single FTE under the range that was originally the communications position instead of the lower range, which is the community events coordinator position.
And I think what we're looking for is, at this point, this is pretty no-brainer. So any objections to this?
Okay.
Say no objections.
Moving on to the next. Eliminating the TLT position. Any objections?
What is TP?
Oh, it's from limited temporary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Any objections to this? Seeing none.
Okay, next. We discussed the reorganization of the, Kathleen, of the community development department already. I think, we have a noted objection to that. I don't have anything more to add than the analysis I already did on this.
Are there any current objections after our last conversation?
Okay.
Not hearing any.
And then the final is the new term limited temporary utility locate. And if there are additional questions, do we still have Director Leszewski? We do. And so if you have questions, we can have Director Leszewski.
Councilmember Naflin and then Councilmember Schaefer.
Yeah, I'm just curious, are we recouping, do you think, enough revenue to cover the cost of this employee? It wasn't completely clear to me about what our revenue is. I don't know how much the permit is, but it does seem like it takes a lot of work. And are we actually asking
Yeah.
enough permit fee to cover the cost.
So the right of way permit fees go to the street fund.
Mhm.
But the work that identifies the items in the right of way are utility related. We did set a right of way fee to take care of the long-term degradation was our attempt at asphalt management, right? So they come in and patch, that does weaken your structure, we do have a fee for that. So currently, yeah, we have. Oh, was that not coming out? Sorry. That, yeah, revenue is in the memo. Permit revenue from 2025 is 105,000 to date. That to date, and that's if you extrapolate that, you have 126 to the end of the year. And in the memo too, you can see from 2022, we tripled from 23 to 24. We almost doubled from 24 to 25. We doubled again. So there's a graph that shows the amount of activity out of the right of way permit fund. But again, those fees are intended to support some service management, not people management per se. So
Are we allowed to collect money to recoup for the cost of?
we're recouping the cost of the fee we set. So we can't do specific, like you could change your fee to include more fee to cover more things. But without changing the fee, no, you can't really charge them. If you charge them for hourly work, inspections, other things like that, like we hit them hard when they make a error, they get hit with a fine. Like you can see it's 10 times what it was in 2022. So that is there. It is temporary limited term. Resources are available to do this, and we're spending, for the table about 1.5 FTE running around. And when this whole thing kind of started, we were running. When a locate is called in, it can be for a for sale sign in the front yard, which we can all see like 30 feet is pretty easy to manage. But now we have permits coming in for entire neighborhoods. We do ask them to break it up on what is a reasonable approach, because we have 40 hours to respond and then spray the ground. So that's a lot. We meet with them weekly, both Ziply and Comcast. Their deployment period is another 2 years to be finished. So those fine people are running from now for a lot for 2 years total. But we have them working on reasonable chunks. So for example, if Cameron Park, right? We don't want to locate all of Cameron Park in one location. So it is broken up into increments of 1 or 2 streets at a time. So we can give them space to go work. They can give us space to get it done, and we can make, metered progress through town. So there is an amicable approach from what their request is, but that is a lot of work as opposed to somebody calling in to locate their sewer, have some plumber come out and unclog their sewer lines. That's a different animal than locating sewer, water, and storm, all 3 elements. And every house has a service, and every street has the utility running in it as main line. So it's just a ton of work and a lot of liability. So that was our intent. We're just burning a lot of time. Usually the leads have to take that time on because we've trained 2s, 3s in leads, but again, you also have to have people doing work. So the leads can end up doing it the fastest because they're normally most first and where all the utilities are. So it'd be great to have a newer person. And these guys have friends. They work for utility locate companies that do this all day long. There sounds like there's some interest, even limited term. So we're hopeful just to get somebody in it, reading plans consistently, deploying the work consistently, and then working with Joe more one-on-one. And so scattered as we have to do it now.
I have no opposition. I just am hoping we're recouping how much it's actually costing us. And the roads are all getting torn up. So that's all. I just want to make sure we're recouping enough to cover the cost.
Right. Councilmember Schaefer?
I'm gonna ask the same question as Jennifer, but a slightly different one. I want to make sure that Ziply, Comcast, developers, and whoever else needs these locate requests is paying for them and not the residents of Jubal. That's the whole purpose. They got to pay as they go. So through permit, do we need to adjust the permit fee somehow to make that the case? If so, I think the council should consider that. I don't want the residents of Duval to pay for putting in the Simply lines and the locate costs that go along with those. And I don't think the residents want to do that. Do we need to adjust something? Pay for this.
Well, I'll talk to Oscar. What you have to remember is when you sell your home to a current citizen, you call in the same number that a developer calls or that Simply calls. So we don't discriminate or differentiate on calls. The number comes in, you have to call and go to. Obviously, we know when it's the utility company or Simply's people or Comcast people, we actually meet with them weekly, standing meetings, so everybody's on track, on pace. Like I said, I can bring that back to the next meeting with an answer. I don't have a problem trying to get that answer for you, but they are also providing. I'm honestly quite surprised. There's always messes and holes and people get upset, but most people want another alternative to their current cable provider. I haven't, like, my neighbors are asking, $65 for 2 gigs up and down. Like, I'm not a sales guy, but they're, like, hey, when is that coming through our neighborhood? Like, that's how bad people want it. So I'll see if we can differentiate, change the fee. I don't mind. I don't care, but I'm just letting you folks know, like, the work is distracting from the other work, and we are obligated by law. I don't run 811 and pay charges, and we just have to do it.
Right.
And we do our best to make sure they are putting in reasonable requests too.
So
We have Oscar on the line.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm just chiming in to say that I'm happy to, work with Steve on this after the meeting. This is, an important issue. I don't know if it's directly related to the budget item, but it's something that we can take a closer look at and follow up, and if I can help and coordinate with Steve on that, then we can figure out what the lay of the land is.
Well, in my opinion, that would be excellent. I think we should do that. I'm not against these additional positions. I understand they're needed. I understand we're obligated to respond. So I'm all, I'm going to approve these positions, but the follow up is, let's make sure that the right people, the right organizations are paying their own way.
Understood.
Mayor Pro Tem Mercer.
Yeah, I mean, that was really my only point. I mean, we're sort of conflating the two things. I think it sounds like there's some consensus, and I'll let the mayor, you continue to see if there's objections, but for this evening, at least, the focus should be on, is there rationale for these positions? I think those are valid questions to ask. Are we recouping costs? But I think the fee conversation can be separated from the budget approval piece.
All right, sounds like there's consensus on that. And that was it. All right, thank you. So we will move on to Agenda Bill 25-51, approval of the Civil Service Commission's rules and regulations for discussion and decision. Chief Keller.
Good late evening, Mayor and Council. So what I presented and what I use as time for is to make sure that I'm answering your questions, going through the process to make sure we update our Civil Service Commission rules and regulation. The last adoption was in 2018. Since then, a number of things have changed. One is we don't have a fire department anymore that we're hiring for. We probably never had that in the aspect until a long time ago, but we also have certain regulations regarding disciplinary action that have been adopted by the state and the Criminal Justice Training Commission that need to be adopted by civil service to make sure things are correct and appropriate. It was placed in the packet, and we did receive some comments from Councilmember Ullman, and I appreciate that information. There were some things that, I think all of you got a response back from the city administrator regarding the issue about forward, but he found a typo that I missed in that aspect. But I think there were some things that you did address and that we did have Oscar take a look at to make sure that they're in order to take care of those things. My intention is that if you wanted to vote on acceptance, you could, but I would like to make the recommendations and changes and present that in for the next council meeting that's adopted. I think that some of those things that were outlined are viable, going through that process. The one question that didn't quite have answered based on that, I know that you had a question regarding a report, an annual report presented by that, and it is in the civil service rules. I just want to make sure that what that was listed in there meets your question or.
No, I appreciate that. I'm fine with it. I had missed it. And so, yeah, the way 14.4 is written, I'm good with that. I appreciate that, Sarah. And if we find down the road it's insufficient or something.
So we know we can go through that process and do it.
Yeah.
The only thing left for me to do is make those corrections to add something in there. And I think there was a question of maybe there needs to be some ongoing training for civil service commission. And I think that's appropriate. Just defining which side of training it is. And some of it has to do with, there are certain things that the planning commission goes through, those certain trainings that you have to deal with how to manage meetings and go through that process, as well as any type of updates that occur in civil service. I think is highly appropriate going through that process. So my intention is to go forward and make these corrections submitted into the packet for next week for consent.
Yeah, sweet.
Any objections from council on that? All right, well, seeing none, we're at the end of our agenda then. So a little bit later than I'd hoped for our members online, but with that, unless there are objections, we are adjourned. And have fun this week, Ron and Amy. They're in Salt Lake City for the National League of Cities.